Testing. Testing. There we go. That's what I wanted. Audio check. Testing, 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 testing. Let's go live. Here we go. I think my audio is probably okay. Here we go. Howdy, howdy. We're a little bit early, but you know, no harm has ever come from being early, right? Thank you for sharing the live, and if you're just joining us, make sure to share the live. You guys know what to do. I am so tired today. Like, obscenely tired. But here we are. Always commit to the bit. Oh, my stream thing is not right. Tools. Oh, wait, no, it's YouTube that's being weird. There we go. Just answering. Um, am I having, did I just have a stroke? Because the text on my chat bar just got really small, I think. Um, so I didn't make this background. If it's AI, you know, okay. If somebody wants to make me a non-AI background from scratch, by all means. I'm not particularly skilled enough to make good backgrounds, so why is the text so small? What is happening? Okay, I guess it's just small now. This is just the life I live. I'm sinking. Are you sinking? No. Um, I do not smell any burnt toast, so we're good in that regard. But we do have some guests, so I should bring up a guest. Hey, how's it going?
Going good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you MAGA?
I voted for Trump. Yeah.
Do you like what he's been doing?
Um, I mean, I like some of it, not all of it, but like overall, I'd say yeah.
Would you say that you're generally pro-science?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you familiar with what was in the Big Beautiful Bill?
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah. Have you read about the science cuts that they're doing?
Like cutting the EV tax credit.
No, like cutting all of the cutting like basically half the research division at NASA, cutting um huge chunks of the mathematical science and the physical sciences from the National Science Foundation, cutting huge amounts of the NIH, those kinds of things.
Um, like I'm not sure of every single cut they're making, but like I think that there's, some not all science is worth putting taxpayer dollars into.
How much do you think? So let me give an example, and then we can just talk about it. So um, there's a space telescope called the Chandra X-ray Observatory. It's in space. It's been operational for 2.5 decades. It's continuously been providing good data. Research papers use that data all the time, including last year, this year. Um, that telescope, the entire project was cut. There's a telescope still completely perfectly operational out in space, just completely cut, no longer able to be used. Is that a good thing?
So what innovations have we been able to make because of that telescope? How has that telescope improved our lives?
Oh, so you're pro engineering, not pro science.
Well, the two are related. They're not completely unrelated.
Well, right,
But I
but like,
think
do you
if
do
we're
you think that like
choosing,
learning how the universe works is worthwhile or no?
I think we should try to learn things that have engineering applications rather than just try to learn things to learn things.
Okay, so you just don't care about like learning how the universe works?
Um, I mean, I think if people want to do it with private money, then no. Like, I'm still in favor of it, but like I honestly get why, why they would cut that because
So
I think people like
what if I told you that the Chandra X-ray Observatory discovered the origins of the X-rays that are coming off of the poles of Jupiter, which is a place that we're looking to potentially colonize in the future?
colonize Jupiter, isn't it a gas
Colonize one of the
giant?
Titan, colonize one of the moons of Jupiter, which is, in orbit around Jupiter. We're actually sending a
Um,
probe there. We're spending $500 million to send a probe there soon.
pretty far away, right?
Yeah. So
I
is
mean,
Mars.
wouldn't
So is the
Mars be
moon.
the Mars is closer though, right, than Jupiter?
Yeah, mildly. But so
Correct.
you're just fine with cutting basic research. How much money do you think it cost? How much money do you think that this was saving?
I mean, not a lot compared to other things.
Give me
I
a
mean,
guess.
I don't think we should be cutting science. I think we should be cutting like welfare. But I see why they would cut science
Why?
because I think they think that it's better to spend money that on things that impact Americans' lives than to
Like
spend money on
like ICE
future.
and military and DoD budgets?
Yeah, like immigration. Like I think most MAGA voters aren't voting based on science issues. I think they're voting based on other issues.
Like
I definitely didn't vote based
like
on.
$12,000 tax cuts for people making over 125K a year?
I mean, sure, tax cuts, immigration. I'd say is a big one. Foreign policy.
So this
Yeah.
telescope takes 7 cents per person per year to operate.
Mhm.
7 cents. And it's,
Just
by
off.
the way, that was its budget. Its budget was 7 cents per person per year.
It only costs that they cut 7 cents per year.
7 cents
What's the
per
total
person per
amount?
year. So if you take every person in the United States and ask them to pay, essentially they are saving 7 cents per person.
Okay.
And the upshot of save or the downside of saving that 7 cents is now the best telescope in the X-ray part of the spectrum in the world, the only one capable of its, the things that it's capable of doing, the only, and it's an American telescope, just completely shut down for 7 cents.
Well, you could start a foundation and ask people to donate 7 cents per year, and then if they want to fund it, they could, and if they don't, they don't.
Why not you do that for ICE?
For ICE,
Yeah,
well, ICE is something
or
that
for the DoD.
um, I mean, ICE directly benefits everyone, so it would be unfair
Do you
to
think that
tax
science
it.
doesn't directly benefit everybody? I mean, like,
I'm not sure if a telescope in space directly benefits everyone. Like, I don't think it really benefits
well, so ICE
everyone
doesn't directly benefit
directly.
me at all, right? It doesn't directly benefit you unless like you work for ICE.
Well, it benefits like the
It might
security of a country because you're securing the borders. The same way like the
so maybe it
military directly
indirectly
benefits.
benefits you, is
Mm,
what you're
I'd
saying?
say directly. Well, I guess you could say indirectly. It's like the same way the military benefits you. The military benefits you not because you work for the military, because you get to live in a safe country that's
Yeah,
not under attack,
and
right?
scientific investigations benefit you because you get to live in the most scientifically advanced country that has
Because of
benefits
our telescopes.
because of our telescopes, because of our scientific institutions, because of the research that we do, because of the people that we attract. One of the best ways to remain on top of the, like, remain technically superior to every other country on the planet is to have strong scientific institutions. But it seems like the Republican Party, MAGA, is not particularly interested in having strong scientific institutions. And that's why scientists are fleeing the country, like literally fleeing the country in droves. Do you think that's good for America?
I think when you say like MAG is not interested in having strong scientific institutions,
Okay, so
I
you're
don't
just fine with
think
us.
that
You're just fine with us losing to China.
I don't think MAGA's like I don't think their concern is really like I think there are other issues that they're worried about. I don't think Trump
What do you
ran
think
on
happens when all of the top scientists go to China instead of America?
I don't think that will happen.
That's literally happening.
Which scientists?
So, two universities in China have already offered full rides to every single student who was denied access to Harvard because of the policy that makes Harvard not able to take international students. So, rather than the top scientists coming to Harvard, getting their education in America, benefiting America, now they're going to China.
Well, Trump's been like a he's been a proponent of merit-based immigration in the past, but I think that these top universities are having issues with international students. So
The issues being
like
that they're
encampments,
international.
protests. No, that they're like disrupting the campus life with protests and stuff.
Wait, so do you think that that's mostly international students or mostly local students?
Um, as a percentage wise, well, there's more local students. Like,
Yep.
are we talking like per capita? Like, there's
No,
more
I'm just
local.
talking at Harvard.
Well, I'd assume it's mostly local
And
students because
to
there's
be
more
clear, why
local.
does it matter if campus life is being disrupted? We're still getting the best and the brightest coming to America. Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, but like you have these like on Columbia where they're like taking over the dining hall and barricading it,
Yep,
and
that's
they
what
need
protests
the
do.
what?
That's what protests do. It's a time-honored American tradition. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't think that they should be taking over the dining hall and barricading it, and
So
we need
you're
the police to come and raid the dining hall because protesters took it over. I think if I went to
so
Columbia,
protesting is
I'd
a time-honored American tradition. Surely you agree with this. We kind of started with the whole Boston Tea Party thing. Um, but like it seems irrelevant. Why attack these scientific institutions that we have? Like it's like I can tell you as somebody who is a scientist living in the United States. I've been told by so many colleagues from both Europe and from Oceania, from Australia and New Zealand, hey, do you want to start applying for jobs here? Because we'll take you. Like top scientists. I'm not a top scientist, by the way. I'm just a normal one. But top scientists are literally being poached because it doesn't feel safe for scientists to be here.
when
Like
you
our jobs
said
are at risk.
like why are we getting rid of international students? That's why, because they're causing issues, right?
But I mean, regular like American students are also doing the same thing, right?
I,
Like
I think
it's pretty clear that that was a pretense just to attack Harvard, right?
I mean there's
Because
multiple
Harvard
reasons.
didn't bend the knee,
Well, Columbia did. Like attack Columbia too.
and then Columbia bent the
Yeah.
knee, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So this was more
It's a
about
way
attacking
to.
Harvard. It wasn't actually about the international students, right?
Well, you're talking about they attacked it by cutting funding.
Well, yeah, and then also made it impossible for visas to be given to student visas to be given to international students attending Harvard. That was the thing. You remember that?
Yeah, it was like a power move to like
Yeah,
pressure
yeah,
Harvard into complying with his demands,
yeah. And the
right?
demands basically were like, yeah, you should stop funding XYZ things, which are part of the scientific process.
No, I think the demands were like you should get a control on anti-Semitism. I think that's what it came down to.
Do you think that, generally speaking, Trump is Trump or that MAGA is the party of that's pro-Jew?
Yeah, I do.
Why is it that most Jewish people are firmly anti-MAGA then?
Um, I mean, just because Jewish people support something doesn't mean that
Why
it's
is it
pro.
that Nazis are only found in the Republican Party?
You're talking about like what percent of people are Yahtzees?
Look, so
Like
all I'm saying is that Jewish people tend to be anti-MAGA, Nazis tend to be pro-MAGA, and you're saying that the MAGA party is pro-Jew.
that's like a logical fallacy. Just because
No, it's not.
Yahtzees
It's
support
an
something
inference.
doesn't. Okay, but just because Yahtzees support something doesn't mean that it's Yahtzee, or just because Jews support something
I
doesn't
didn't
mean
say
that
it
it's
was. I said
pro-Jew.
that I said, or I'm questioning the inference that the MAGA party is the pro-Jew party.
Because they support, they're the ones that are supporting Israel. I'd
Sorry,
say.
what? Sorry, is Israel Jewish people?
No. Well, Israel's
Okay.
like, yeah, I mean, kind of. It's a Jewish state.
It is a Jewish state. Are you able to support a country without supporting the people or vice versa?
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like
I think
supporting a state is not the same as supporting a people.
I think most Jews support Israel, and
Sure.
MAGA
And they
supports
also
Israel.
don't support MAGA.
Um, I'm not sure if that's true. I guess that's
No, it's
probably is
like
true.
80% of American Jews voted for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean the foreign Jews I think support MAGA. The Israeli Jews definitely support MAGA,
Okay.
but
So you do like
I'd say
foreigners.
I do like foreigners. I don't really like or dislike foreigners.
Okay. Yeah, so what do you think about climate change?
I mean I think it's like sensationalized, but I think it's an issue.
Do you think that humans are causing it?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think Trump called it a hoax then?
Um, I mean I think the way that it's presented is kind of a hoax.
Can you elaborate?
Like I think people use it to fearmonger and to push political agendas rather than really discuss the science. Like AOC
So
said, the
what do you
world
think the
would be
science
over
amounts to,
that the climate's changing, but
right? And
um,
in what way?
that generally like the ozone's going away. There's more CO2 in the air, stuff like that.
So the ozone thing, that's like 25 years old, 30 years old at this point. It's not an ozone thing. We actually fixed
No.
that problem. Scientists came together, figured out what was causing the issue, gave a proposal. The international community agreed with that proposal, and then we fixed the problem. It was back in
It's like
the late 80s.
CO2 emissions.
Yeah, so climate change is the warming of the earth, right? It's the warming of the earth, the acidification of the oceans, melting of ice, increased severe weather
Rise.
events, things like this, right? Um, and so, generally speaking, like I'm glad that you agree that it's a real thing. You don't seem to agree that it's a big deal.
That it's like the end of the world now. I don't think the world will be coming to an end because of climate change.
Well, I mean, the world will be fine, but who says anything about humans?
Well, like that's what I mean by the end of the world. Like
Well, I mean,
the end
like
of the world.
so something like 95% of 94% of the climate models for the last 50 years, 45, 50 years, have been right in their predictions. And the predictions are not looking good. Like we're talking like another foot of sea level rise in the next 50 years, which will displace 200 million people. We're talking an increase in temperature of like 1 to 2 degrees Celsius over the next 50 years, which will significantly increase the cost of food production. We're looking at more extreme weather events. We're looking at decimation of sea life. Like these are not good things. Do you think that that's just like inaccurate?
I mean, I don't think that 1 foot of sea level rise is like going to be the end of humanity.
No, but it'll displace a few hundred million people.
Um,
That'll actually bring more immigrants, probably illegal, to the United States.
we're doing things about it, right?
Doing things about
I,
climate change?
yeah,
Who? Who's doing things about it?
like Tesla, you know,
Tesla's not doing anything about climate change. And
we're
the new
moving
bill
to.
just the new bill is rolling back EV tax breaks, right?
Yeah, it is.
So like that seems like we're kind of like trying to undo stuff that resolves climate change.
I mean, I think we're slowly moving to a electric and to nuclear as far as our power.
So the new bill just cut subsidies for non-coal, non-oil, non-petroleum power generation.
Hmm. Well, I think that like these types of energy should be able to exist on their own without the government having to pay for them.
They
They're
are
still
cheaper. They are cheaper than coal and gas energy production, by the way.
well, like wind and solar,
Yeah, they're cheaper
cheaper like per
per kilowatt
kilowatt.
hour. Yep,
I mean, they take like huge. I mean, I don't think that's true.
it is. It like
They're
it
super. They're super
I
inefficient.
I can show you a chart if you'd like.
Yeah.
One sec. Let me pull up the chart. This one. Oh no, that's the cost of building electric power plants. I mean, I guess actually that's probably fine. We probably fuck with that. Let me pull it up.
And wind and solar are generally like super inefficient.
No, they're actually like wildly efficient nowadays.
They take tons of
Here you go.
of
Can you see
land.
this? This is the
Power
cost of building
plant.
electric power plants. So you can build like a solar power plant, which is just like in a giant array, or you can build a wind power plant.
Yeah, but this isn't per how much power it produces. This is
This
just the
is
cost of building.
cost in US dollars per kilowatt hour that the power plant generates.
Cost. Can you zoom out? Well, then we shouldn't need to subsidize them because they're the cheapest, right? I mean,
Sure.
why are we subsidizing them if they're
To
already the cheapest?
encourage people to do it more, right?
Yeah, but
Because
people would. I mean, why would anyone build any other type of power plant if these are already the cheapest ones?
well, for what it's worth, there are subsidies for other forms of electricity generation, like coal and natural gas. So that encourages people to do the opposite. But more than that, people have a general aversion, especially a particular side of the political aisle has a general aversion to doing things that produce renewable electricity.
They're just against renewable electricity.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people are.
I
I mean,
think
you
I
are,
think Republicans are
even
generally the
because you
ones who
were
are more in
ill-informed about
favor
it.
of nuclear.
Sorry?
Nuclear. I
Okay,
think
yeah, so
Republicans are generally more in favor of nuclear power
nuclear
than
power is
Democrats.
great. Nuclear power is great. I think you're thinking of the Green Party. The Green Party doesn't like nuclear, but Democrats generally do. Nuclear power is great, but it costs 20 years to commission a nuclear power plant. Sorry, not it costs. It takes 20 years to commission a nuclear power plant, and it costs billions of dollars.
Because it's so overregulated, right?
Do you want a nuclear power plant that doesn't have significant safety regulations?
I mean, I think that there's a right amount of regulations.
Yeah.
I think
And we
that
haven't had a nuclear
overregulation.
accident. We haven't had a nuclear accident in like 40 years. And you want to reduce safety regulations?
Yeah, but we also haven't had like wide scale nuclear power infrastructure like France does, or like a lot of European countries do.
Yeah, generally people don't want nuclear in their backyard. People are afraid of
Okay,
it
but why do French people want nuclear in their backyard?
because French people are smarter than Americans.
Hmm. It's just I think that that's like I don't think that that's the Republicans. I think the Democrats are just as anti-nuclear, and the Democrats are
Well, I mean,
generally the
no,
ones who are.
so generally politicians aren't anti-nuclear, except the Green Party. People tend to be anti-nuclear, the voting bases, and that's true in like basically like uniformly across Americans, across like the American voter base, just because people have this fear of like Chernobyl and Three Mile Island and Fukushima and things like that.
Hmm. Well, like another example would be like GMOs. Like, who do you think is more against? I mean, do you think GMOs are safe?
At least as far as the scientific consensus is concerned, it seems to be yeah.
Yeah, and I think that generally, Democrats are the ones who are against GMOs that are all for,
No, again,
organic.
you're thinking of like the Green Party.
No, I don't think so. I think it's like, Democrats are all about
Wait,
that like
hold on. I'm
organic.
sorry. Who does RFK Jr. work for?
Um, like the health board or something.
Yeah, who's his boss?
Trump.
Okay, and who's the guy who's been railing against, they're putting chemicals in our food and all that stuff?
Yeah, that guy's kind of a quack. But
Okay, and so who is against GMOs again?
is he against GMOs? I thought he's against like pasteurization or something like that.
Pasteurization is literally just boiling milk.
I know what it is. I just haven't heard him speak about GMOs.
Yes. Apparently, so generally don't trust AI overviews, so let's go look at the sources. But apparently he has been a vocal critic of GM crop. Yeah, so according to AG Funder News. What is AG Funder News? What is this? I've never heard of. Okay, so they're in agriculture. They actually might be super biased, but we'll see what they say, and then we can look at their sources. According to AG Funder News, which is suspect, while Kennedy has not outlined detailed plans to reform the food and farming industry, he is a vocal critic of GM crops and has expressed a desire to restrict the use of synthetic pesticides, which raises alarm bells for the Breakthrough Institute. So they do have a source here, but their source is the Wall Street Journal. Okay, so it's like from a legitimate news source. So it does seem that RFK is a vocal critic of genetically modified crops.
I'm not a fan of him.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of cutting the telescope or getting rid of the EV tax credit. But I just think that there's like much more important issues to vote on.
Yeah, but like, so I mean, like maybe you think there are more important things, but like clearly the policy prescriptions of the MAGA party, the policy interests of the MAGA party, are like firmly anti-scientific investigation, right? Like we're defunding universities who do scientific research. The vast majority of people we're defunding scientific organizations like NASA, like the NSF, that fund the scientific research. The vast majority of people who think that evolution, climate change, vaccines, name your science, the vast majority of those people in America are members of the MAGA party.
It's like a tiny percent of America that has like no influence.
Just to be clear, what percentage of people what percentage of Americans do you think don't believe in evolution?
I'd say under 5%.
I wish you were right. It's closer to like 40%. So as of 2013, and it's gotten worse. As of 2013, it was a third of Americans don't think that humans evolved from, non-human apes. Like, it's so much worse than you think.
How many people were surveyed?
This is Pew Research, my guy. Are we just being like, yeah, Pew Research is not like a reliable source?
That's just like an insane claim, that a third of people.
So they had 4,000 people in the survey. It's not an insane claim. You just haven't met them. Wait, how old are you? Can I ask?
I'm 19.
Okay, so you weren't around for this, but in the early 2000s, there was a push by Republicans to try to start teaching intelligent design in schools next to evolution.
Yeah, I know.
That hasn't gone away.
The pressure from like Republican politicians.
That topic's dead. Like people don't push for that anymore because they recognize that it's stupid. But the same people who thought that they should teach intelligent design in school, those people still exist and still vote Republican.
I don't think they have like a lot of influence.
They make up a third of the American population 10 years ago, and it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was from like 2014?
This is from 2013, yeah.
What's it now then?
I can see if I can find a poll. This is from Gallup. Okay, let's see if we can find it. Okay, so it's about the same. Actually, it's higher. So 37% of Americans, as of 2024, believe that God created humans in their present form.
34%?
37%.
37%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess you kind of, it must be in those small rural religious communities. Right?
Well, it's a third of the country, right?
Yeah. I assume it's like the ultra religious people in like the South or something.
Sure. Keep in mind that those people make up the majority of MAGA, right?
I don't know. Is there a poll of like MAGA voters? How many of them believe in evolution?
Yes, actually. I have one of those too. Um, um, well, I have one for conservatives anyway, because MAGA didn't exist when this data was collected. But conservatives so I'm just reading a quote now from the survey, or from the study that analyzed the survey. Conservatives are less likely than liberals to say humans have evolved over time, and Republicans and independents who lean to the GOP are 10 percentage points less likely than are their Democratic counterparts to say that humans have evolved after controlling for religious affiliation, service attendance, and other factors. So, by the way, an interesting fact here is even after you account for religious proclivities, even after you account for religious differences, saying that yes, people who lean right tend to be more religious than people who lean left. After you account for that, conservatives are still more likely to think that humans didn't evolve.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely some like religious fanaticism. Like that's definitely a bigger issue on the conservative side than on the Democrat side. Um, as far as things like evolution.
So, and we agree that generally speaking, okay, so we agree that generally speaking, MAGA is doesn't ex- that MAGA is far more likely to not accept the scientific consensus as far as evolution is concerned.
Um, like politicians or like individual voters.
Voters and probably politicians, though I haven't seen any data on the actual politicians.
Yeah, sure.
And do you think the same is true for climate change? Do you think that MAGA is far more likely to reject the scientific consensus as far as climate change is concerned?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that MAGA voters are far more likely to reject the scientific consensus as far as vaccines are concerned?
Um, I'm not sure on that one. I mean, being anti-vax used to kind of be like a hippie thing to do, you know, like
Used to be. Those
it
hippies
used to be
are MAGA voters
like a
now.
hippie vegan. Like,
Yep.
well,
Yep.
it was just the COVID vaccine, right? That became like the MAGA one.
No, it actually turns out that even before the COVID vaccine, Republicans were significantly less likely to trust medical health experts. But I mean, yes, it is significantly worse now that Republicans are significantly less likely to trust medical health advice.
I think that it's just that they're less likely to trust the government when the government's trying to cram down vaccine mandates.
Well, no,
Because
that's actually that it's not the case. It's not governments. Republicans are less likely to trust their doctors than Democrats are. Republicans are significantly less likely to trust medical researchers than Democrats are. They're less likely to trust pharmaceutical companies than Democrats are. Although, I think that probably we shouldn't trust pharmaceutical companies all that much. This is not just the government. Now, they are less likely to trust the government too. But no, it's doctors, medical researchers, it's the entire medical industry.
mhm. I remember when being anti-vax used to be like like you're a vegan and you believe in like essential oils.
Yeah,
It
so
used to
you're
be like
right. If you had asked this question 20 years ago, you probably would have got that it's like more people on the left who are um, anti-medical health, anti-medical science or medical science consensus. It's not that way anymore, though.
yeah, and it used to be people on the left that were distrusting of like these big pharmaceutical corporations when
Well, interestingly enough,
they're pushing
it's
out
the left still
vaccines
doesn't
already.
trust pharmaceutical companies, by the way. That same poll that I was just looking at, the trust in pharmaceutical companies is less than 50% for both parties. But the trust in, say, medical researchers is less than 50% for Republicans, and it's 80% for Democrats. So these are researchers, not pharmaceutical companies, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that like there's a lot of issues with the right when it comes to science, but I think that like most people who voted for Trump, looked at all the issues and said like these are the ones that are more important. I don't think it's because they're anti-science. Like I didn't vote for Trump based
I
on
didn't
scientific issues.
I didn't say that people voted for Trump because they're anti-science. I said that people who did vote for Trump tend to be anti-science.
Like on the large scale,
Yes.
like the majority.
Yeah.
Based on the majority, you don't believe in evolution.
And the majority don't trust medical researchers to do their job. The majority don't think that climate change is a thing. Like we could there have been polls specifically on trust in scientific research, as recently as like last month. And what you'll find is that liberals just trust scientists to like accurately report the data more than conservatives do in a statistically significant way.
Well, I think conservatives are just less trusting of institutions overall.
That might be true, but
Probably.
scientists aren't institutions. Scientists are individuals, right?
Uh-huh. Or even just less trusting overall. So what would
Well,
be the
except that,
conclusion?
except they believe Trump whenever he says something, right? That's like the that's why it's the MAGA party now and not the GOP.
Yeah, it's a cult or whatever. Is that?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that like if you go against Trump as a politician, you will lose your job.
I mean, I
There
think
there are
politics.
very few anti-Trump Republicans that are still in office. Very few.
I don't think that's like necessarily a new thing with Trump. I think you have to be loyal to your party, right?
I mean, generally speaking, the power that a president holds in their party has not been such that if you disagree with him, that he will go fund your opponents to primary you. That's not really been a thing.
Yeah. So what's like let's say everything you're saying is true, right? Like what conclusion would you draw? What's like the
This is a descriptive
what's
statement. I'm just trying to convey the idea that yeah, if you care about science, MAGA's probably not the party for you.
So is there like MAGA? You say like the MAGA party. I mean,
Yep.
Trump's not going to be in office in 3 years or 4 years. Would
Okay.
still be the MAGA party.
Okay. Maybe. Who knows? We'll have to see
Or would-
how it develops.
Go back to the Republican Party.
Maybe. Who knows? It might just stay the same thing with just a different leader.
So is there there's not like a big like takeaway from this?
The takeaway is if you like science, then MAGA's not the right party for you. That's the takeaway.
So what would I do then?
Well, I mean, you can't go back and take back your vote, but you could feel bad about voting for the guy that is destroying the American scientific community. That would be like one thing that you could do. I mean, it doesn't actually do anything, of course, right? But, or you could start pushing back on the anti-scientific, views that your fellow MAGA types push.
I mean,
if you care about science.
If you care about science, wouldn't it be better to focus on the future rather than the past, to try and promote candidates that do care about science, rather than to try and like isn't it kind of useless to criticize Trump now that he's already in office? Wouldn't it be better to criticize the next candidate that doesn't care about science?
Wouldn't it be better? Or I shouldn't criticize Trump because he's already here. He's still here. He'll be here for 3 years.
Exactly. So
that's what.
The point of what I'm saying is that
if he's doing anti-science stuff now, we should call it out now.
Yeah, but we can't do anything about it now until the next election.
Well, A, you can. There is a function. There's like governmental function called impeachment. And B, there's midterms in like a year. And C, you can still talk to your representatives and have them push back against Trump's agenda. Like these are all things that you could do.
Write a letter to my congressperson.
Yeah. Yep.
I suppose. I mean, it would seem more productive to focus on politicians that are still can be elected or can be thrown out of office.
Okay, yeah, right? Let's throw out every single Republican politician from Congress and the Senate. Everyone that voted for the big beautiful bill, throw them all out.
The big beautiful bill did other stuff not related to science.
Yeah, it just cut our scientific institutions by basically in half.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't if you like our scientific institutions, if you think that scientific research is valuable, then yeah, throw them all out of Congress. Absolutely.
Well, I like our scientific research, and I think most people do, but or maybe not.
You'd be very surprised.
I think most people are more concerned about other issues than to vote solely on science. Most people aren't single issue voters on scientific institutions.
So one of the things that made America great in the 40s and 50s, like this is what led to the American dominance, is the fact that we attracted the most brilliant scientists in the world, right? We attracted them during and after World War II, and then they stayed, and we became dominant because from science everything follows: technology, engineering, efficiency, things like this. That's why America was dominant in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up to today, or at least to the 2010s. So, like this, an educated populace is a good is like a strong and powerful populace, right? A stupid populace is that's how you get Russia. That's how you get North Korea.
Well, I think it was more about the economic systems of the United States versus Russia and North Korea as to why they failed.
Russia
Are you
is
talking about the censorship? Like there's censorship in Russia and North Korea?
censorship. The fact that well, North Korea, nobody's fled North Korea. Well, people have, but scientists haven't. But my point is brain drain. Are you familiar with that term, brain drain?
Yeah.
Brain drain has been amazing for the United States because they've all been drained to here. We have the best universities in the country, which attracts the most intelligent students, which leads to the like most effective scientists and engineers, right? It's been really, really good for the US. It's been atrociously bad for every country that it happened to when people were leaving.
I think that's a result of our capitalism, not a
It has
result of
nothing to do with our capitalism. It's because of our industry. It's because of our universities.
We said engineers, and engineers are generally
Engineers
on the
come from universities.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have the best universities,
Did I
but
say best universities in the country? I meant best universities in the world, which we objectively
I
do,
know
by the way.
we do have the best universities in the world, but we also attract
Not for long,
people.
but
We also attract engineers from other universities, like from, India, because we have the largest companies with the most money that can pay them the most, right?
so generally speaking, the people who do the innovation in the US are people who are trained in the US. You absolutely do have companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google hiring engineers from elsewhere, but these are not people that are doing the innovation, right? These are the people who are like the workers at the bottom who can work for cheap.
No,
Um,
I don't think so at all. I think there's top
Zuckerberg,
people.
Bezos, even Tesla was educated in, or not Tesla, Musk was educated in the US, right?
There's like top people in Google at Google just hired someone for like six
Yeah, they're
million
hiring
dollars a year.
AI people. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
You
those people
should
are
you should ask
educated
where they
in
got their degrees.
a lot of them are educated in India, like the India Institute of Technology or something.
You should check that. Because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them got their degrees from MIT, from Stanford, from Berkeley, from, Caltech and etc. Even if they might be like, Indian nationals.
Um, I forgot what the school's called.
Here are the top AI researchers who just joined Meta's superintelligence team. This is recent. All right, let's see. Who are they? Alexander Wang. Who's Alexander Wang? Oh, he's an American. Okay. What about who's the next person? He's the serving as Meta's new chief AI officer. There's Nat Friedman. Kind of sounds American.
There's a
American.
Sundar Pichai.
I don't know if we're looking at the same person or the same list, but oh, the CEO of Google.
Yeah, the CEO of Google.
Yeah. So where did he? Yeah, so he earned a bachelor's of tech in metallurgical engineering from IIT Kharagpur. He holds and then he got his master's in science from Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that we have the best universities.
and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And we shouldn't ruin that.
I mean, a lot of their funding comes from private donors too, though.
A lot of private schools, yes. Public schools, no. A lot of their funding comes from the government. They're public schools.
I I mean, like you look at how much
I've looked into the funding for the largest, I don't actually know if it's the largest anymore. It was the largest 10 years ago, the largest university in the country, which was Arizona State University. And 2/3 of its funding came from the government.
yeah, but like you look at like how much money Microsoft has dumped into like Washington for their computer programs. They have one of the best computer programs in the world now. It's because of Bill Gates and Microsoft have put so much money into it.
Yeah. Do you think that that accounts for the majority of funding in the US for universities?
The majority of like, no, not the majority.
Okay. So when we
But
cut that funding, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing.
Okay. And when we, so if I were to tell you that across the entire scientific community, hard sciences, of course, chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics, across the hard sciences, grads, grad school programs are being cut. People are having their offers rescinded. Postdocs are not being hired. Faculty freezes are in place because funding is being limited. Grants are being limited as a result of Trump's NSF, Trump's DoD, Trump's DOE. Is that a good thing? The CDC as well, the NIH.
Grants, like the restrictions they put on the Pell Grants.
I'm not talking about the Pell Grants. I'm talking about these are academic grants that are typically doled out for research, for like research grants or for research programs. These are given by places like the CDC, the NIH, the DoD, the DOE, the NSF. These are like, you know, 3-letter organizations that fund a significant chunk of research at universities. And it's from those funds that universities are able to hire new faculty, new postdocs, add or train more grad students, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So NSF funding in mathematics cut in half. So they're awarding half as many grants. If you have the word diverse in your grant proposal, automatically rejected, automatically canceled. Whereas, and to be clear, diverse doesn't have to apply to humans. You can be talking about a diverse beetle population. And they did a control F, looked for the word diverse, and then cut all the grants that have to do with that.
Yeah, so you just use a different word, right? You use like variable or.
Well, but shouldn't it worry you that people who are cutting scientific funding are not doing it in a careful way? They're just slashing shit.
Well, I think it's like you want to be efficient when you're cutting funding. If it costs more money to cut funding than the actual funding, then
why would it cost more money to read a grant proposal?
You have to pay people to like read them.
Yeah. Right? So wait, are you saying it's better if things get cut that shouldn't have been cut than to be more careful with the cutting?
No, but I think the price of trying to cut government spending is you might accidentally cut things that shouldn't get cut.
And what's the goal of cutting that spending?
To save money for taxpayers.
To save money for taxpayers. Then why did the big beautiful bill increase the deficit? Why did it increase the budget?
It would also cut taxes.
Yeah, so I mean, look, like you spend a certain amount, right? And then you have a certain amount of income. Those numbers, if they don't match, that just means that somebody else has to pay it later, right?
Mm. I know. I know we have a major that problem.
So like it seems like the reason this was cut, these things were cut, was to make room for tax cuts for the people who benefit the most from tax cuts, which are the richest people.
I think tax cuts benefit the economy as a whole because they encourage investment.
No, I mean that's only true if your taxes are sufficiently high, but our taxes aren't that high. You're referring to the Laffer curve, and the Laffer curve, we're not at the peak of the Laffer curve. We're not even close.
Well, we'd rather go, in the right direction.
The right direction would be increasing taxes.
As far as the deficit?
Well, as far as generating revenue, yeah.
To get the optimal amount, the peak of government revenue. I see, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Laffer curve, the whole business is tax. Yeah, that's where you want to be. You want to tax as much as you can without decreasing the GDP, right? Mm-hmm. Without decreasing production. That's the whole business with the Laffer curve.
Yeah.
Because then you can fund, useful things like I don't know, scientific investigations, cancer research. These are all things that we agree are valuable, right?
I mean, these are like a tiny percent of our budget, right?
Yeah, so then why cut them?
Well, the majority of our budget's going to like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, like welfare
The
programs.
military.
Well, not the majority. The military is like 15%.
Well, yeah, but you just listed a bunch of things that aren't the majority either. But if you put them all together, then it's the majority.
Well, like I think Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, welfare is what I'm saying.
Right, but those are three separate things, right?
Yeah, but they all fall under the category of welfare. The majority is going to welfare.
Okay, sure. And it turns out that we have people that need it.
Yeah, but if we want to get, I mean, we did cut some, like, we did make some cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and you know, food stamps and stuff.
Which, I'm surely you don't think that that's a good thing, right?
I do, yeah.
So like
we put requirements that, you know,
so like millions of people losing health insurance is a good thing?
I think we put requirements so that like you have to work if you want to qualify. Like we put conditions on it.
So like millions of people losing healthcare is a good thing.
I think millions of people abuse our system and leech off of it. And yeah, I think those people should.
Do you have like data to support this?
Well, I know people that leech off of it personally.
Okay, so you have anecdotes. Do you have data to support this?
Data?
Yeah, I mean, like evidence, you know.
No, I mean that's not really like a provable thing.
Well, then why would you make policy based off of something you can't prove?
Because I think like a welfare state is generally a bad thing. You know, and we're spending an insane amount on a welfare state. I think that's bad policy.
So it's bad. I mean, like, look, if your position is just that, like, it's fine if people can't afford food and can't afford healthcare, then like, I guess more power to you if that's your view. But like, I think generally most Americans don't want fellow Americans to be starving in the streets or, you know, dying in their homes when they could have gotten healthcare, right?
I mean, I think we should tighten the restrictions on who can qualify for it, right? Because I go around and I see people that are getting welfare that don't need it, and I think that that's an issue, right? So I voted, you know, well, not I voted for it, but like, I think it's a good thing to be cutting welfare because I don't want to see that anymore.
So, I mean, we're a bit off topic, so I'll just ask one question, then we can call it there if you want, unless you want to continue. What would you rather have? Would you rather have 10 people get welfare that they need, and at the same time have one person get welfare that they don't need, or have 5 of those 10 people not get the welfare that they need, but the person who was abusing it also doesn't get the welfare?
I'd rather have 10 people get welfare that they need.
Okay. You seem to be in the minority amongst the people that you vote with. Anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, not really.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. I do appreciate you, all things considered. I don't think you're a bad person. Don't worry.
Well, thank you for that. That's something that I rarely see.
Take care, bud.
You too.
All right, let's talk to a guest from YouTube, SMLG. How's it going? I can't hear you for some reason. But I should be able to hear you. So I think it's on your end.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah. How's it going?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing A-okay. I'm a bit tired though. Are you MAGA?
I am. I'm on the middle ground end, but I am.
Okay. What do you think about climate change? Do you think that humans are causing it?
Okay, and you may or may not like this, but this is my opinion. This isn't grounded. It's grounded in some fact, not 1,000%. Like it is grounded in some fact. Our impact on the world is causing climate change to go quicker. It is something that does happen naturally. If you look at the past and you look at how the world, like during Pangea time, it was there almost no ice from what we know. This is all grounded in some fact, and then we went through the ice age, and I think what's happening on our end is all we're doing is speeding up this cycle that we're in.
So do you acknowledge that 98% of climate scientists disagree with that statement? That this is almost entirely human caused?
I understand and I appreciate where they're coming from.
Okay. How do you feel about evolution? Do you think that humans evolved from non-human animals?
I think everything evolved from non-human or non. There's definitely things to support. We've all come from something else, considering we all share common DNA.
Sure. And do you think that vaccines are generally good? Do you think that they cause, or do you think that they cause autism?
In some cases, yes. Not in all cases. Does that? I don't know
Can
if
you
that makes sense.
Can you be a little bit more specific?
I think that we need to be careful on what we put in our bodies.
Okay.
I don't think that everyone has our best interest in mind.
Okay, it's very vague.
Being as a lot of these organizations and a lot of these, especially companies, I know you and the other gentleman talked about some of that. A lot of companies, especially a lot of these companies in the United States, are for-profit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to not trust them because they're for-profit.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are several nonprofit organizations and several non-government organizations that I would be more inclined to trust.
Okay, so would you say that, generally speaking, you are pro-scientific institutions?
Nonprofit scientific organizations, yes.
I was referring to institutions specifically because I'm not referring to to corporations, right? Okay. Yeah. And would you say that MAGA is generally pro-scientific institutions? Perhaps not companies, but scientific institutions.
I would say probably there's a 60-40 split.
60-40 in which direction?
60 that do, 40 that don't.
Okay, so I'm totally with you that I generally don't trust corporations a whole lot. I generally do tend to trust scientific institutions, places like universities, places like you might not like it, but like, oh no, not universities. Universities are nonprofits.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are. There are for-profit universities like and you may have seen like University of Phoenix or whatever, but state schools like Berkeley, like NYU, even I'm pretty sure that even private universities like Harvard are not for-profit. They have a certain like they're not for-profit corporations, right? They are a certain separate class of entity. But we can verify this if you'd like. So Harvard. Yeah, so Harvard as an educational institution falls under the 501c3. It is a nonprofit.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
So yeah, generally I'm in favor of universities. I like universities because they do the best scientific research. I'm in favor of organizations like NASA and the NIH because these do some of the best space-based and medicine-based research that we have in the country. I'm very fond of there are some private institutions that do research, but very, very few. Would you and you would say that most of MAGA is like generally pro these things, generally pro these scientific institutions?
Like I would say about 60%. There are, and even on the Democratic side, there's definitely the extreme. And I, as personally for me and the people that I've seen and the people that I've met, 60% we all pretty much fall into this weird middle ground that doesn't really exist anymore. Does that?
Well, so when you say 60%, I mean are these people who like what Trump is doing, don't like what Trump is doing? Because like the Republican Party is like overwhelmed in the past. Political parties like the Democratic Party and the Democrat Party and the Republican Party have been less devoted to their president. The Republican Party of today is like Trump has like a 90+% approval rating amongst Republicans.
Yeah.
Which is that doesn't seem like 60-40. It doesn't seem like that's a whole lot of moderate there.
But that is also not where I find, again, personal experience, where I find that a lot of people fall into. For the longest time, I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Dem. I'm an independent at heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm registered to vote as an independent, because there's some things that I like that the Democratic Party is doing. There's some things that I like that the Republican Party is doing, but I find myself each year being pushed further to the right than I am to the left, which I find a lot of young people, especially I'm 22, so I find a lot of young men being pushed into the Republican Party, because I don't know where you're from, but here on the East Coast, a lot of people tend to look down upon white men, and we're not given any sort of representation, if that makes sense. And so
I mean that we
why
could have that
getting
conversation if you want. It's not really related to the topic, but like you do know that like all but one of the American presidents have been white men. The vast majority of congressmen, senators, white men. Like, I don't know what you mean by lack of representation.
Of our values. Does that make sense? Of younger
white man values? What is a white man value?
See, you're taking it out of context.
Well, but you were talking about representation of white men.
No.
And now you're talking about our values. I mean, I'm 32. I'm younger white men. So younger white men. What are younger white men values?
Not younger men and white men. Does that?
Okay, and whose values are we talking about?
Let's go. Let's take the first half here. Let's go. Men 18 to 25.
What are the values of men 18 to 25?
Well, what I see a lot of younger men want is a family-oriented, very wanting something simple in life, very down to earth, less government intervention, less people telling us what to teach our family and our kids as we're coming into the world and growing up. I was raised.
Just so you know, young men overwhelmingly lean Democrat.
Where are you getting your source from?
From Pew Research.
Okay.
Like, young people overwhelmingly lean left, right? That's just a general trend. And yes, women tend to lean left slightly more than men do, but in the age demographic of 18 to 29, because that's how they broke it up, in that age demographic, it's 62 are Democrats or lean Democrats of young men, and 36% are lean right or are Republican. Right? So like that, like, it just doesn't represent, like, the values that you're talking about are just not represented by young men.
I guess that's this side of the water thing then, but again, I don't want to. We're way off topic here. Sorry.
Yeah. So look. Yeah, no. It's fine. It's fine. I'm tired, so I'm easily distractible. So look, my point is that it seems like your claim is that, like, yeah, like 60% of Republicans are like generally pro-science. But then if you go look at the bills that are passed, was one scientific thing? Did we actually increase funding for any scientific things in this recent bill? The answer is not, as far as I could tell. In fact, we cut science by a lot, like across the board. And so if you're
Which is
telling
a
me
lot
that
of
like
things.
most Republicans, most MAGAs, they like science, well, they're definitely not showing it.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, and on the other side of the river there,
What river?
the
What river are we talking about?
I'm just talking Republican
Okay, sure,
Democratic for me.
sure.
Sorry.
You're fine. I'm
Um,
like the like the Mississippi. Like, what are we doing?
Might as well, because that's how it seems that it's really the country's broken. Can we do the
Maybe.
San Andreas fault line? The other side of the San Andreas fault line. No, but the other side of the story here's a lot of, and this does involve scientific research and things of that nature. A lot of the leftist ideals and the leftist things of seeing the world, transgenderism, and those things that, as a Republican, we don't like. And I am speaking for a whole side of a country that I can't speak for everyone, but the majority, and as in voting, has seemed they don't like these things, and that does involve science. And I think the reason why a lot of the Republicans are dismissing science and cutting funding is these things that don't fit into more traditional values, um, are being said by science and taking feelings and putting feelings into science instead of direct numbers and direct, this is what it is and this is what it is. It's going, well, they feel this way, so we're gonna research this because somebody's feeling a certain way.
So
That's another big reason why I
there's
think the right doesn't like science as.
okay. So there's sorry, I have to address two things. One, just to be clear, the scientific consensus, like if you ask neuroscientists, if you ask sociologists, which maybe they're not a hard enough science for you, so we shouldn't ask them. But if you ask neuroscientists, for example,
I have a degree in sociology. It's
okay.
not the right people to ask.
Okay, so anyway, if you ask psychiatrists, which is a medical profession, if you ask neuroscientists, if you ask neurobiologists, they agree that gender is a different thing from sex. They agree that the transgender experience is unique from the cisgender experience, that these are different things. Furthermore, so like, I mean, just the idea that like this is like, you know, some like anti-science thing to be like, you know, pro transgenderism or whatever, like it's just not. Like, this is, the scientific consensus is overwhelming that like, yeah, this is a real thing. But on top of that, even if we didn't know, let's say for a moment that we didn't understand, you know, that like what's going on in the brain and things like that. Suppose that you had some percentage of your population that was experiencing something, and you couldn't explain why they were experiencing that. You didn't have evidence to explain what the experience, like what's causing the experience. Wouldn't it be the smart thing to do would be to investigate that scientifically?
Yes, that would be the smart thing to do, but the United States as a whole is very fucking dumb. Pardon my language.
Well, yeah, it's, I mean, it's I mean, wasn't Trump the one that said that he loves dumb voters? I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And how do you get a smarter population? Do you cut funding to universities, cut funding to public schools, or what do you do if you want a smarter population?
Well, the right answer has been tried in the past, and it doesn't seem to end well.
It works really well. Like, we dominate, at least up until the last 5 years, even actually at least until the last year, we've dominated scientifically in the world for 50 years.
You know who else dominated scientifically for quite a long time, and it didn't turn out well for them? The Germans.
Tell me. Oh, yeah, tell me. Why did it not turn out well for them? Do you know the history?
Because somebody rose up that grabbed a hold of those uneducated, which far outnumber the educated people, and quite literally wiped them off the map.
And what happened to?
I don't know.
And so
on YouTube, I don't want to start
No, you're fine,
saying
you're fine.
things that are gonna get you
Don't worry about it.
demonetized or anything,
So
but
just to be clear, you're telling me that there was a popular figure.
oh, I'm well aware. History is repeating itself. History is repeating itself.
And you're on board with it?
No, I'm not on board with it.
But
No,
you saw what
absolutely
happened
not.
in you you were alive. I mean, you're 22, so you were like aware from 2016 to 2020, right? Or 2017 to 2020, right?
Yeah. I
And
remember
then
before that, but yeah.
yeah. And then like you saw what happened at the beginning of 2021. And then things got, mildly better for a few years. We've inflation went down a little bit, wages went up a little bit, things got mildly better. And then you voted for that guy again?
I don't know about you, but during the Biden administration, I had to walk to work because gas was so inflated. I wasn't able to buy food. I was living literally off of ramen noodles and a portable grill because I didn't have power. And now I've got power, gas in a car, like things that I had before. So personal
Wait,
experience,
where did Oh, you had a car, you just didn't drive to work because gas was expensive.
I couldn't afford to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, so who was the guy who brought inflation down?
Well, I'll put it to you like this: it wasn't Biden.
Well,
I don't know if it was Trump the first time.
Well, but Trump wasn't in office when inflation went down.
Yeah, but it immediately went back up after Biden got in office.
You mean in 2021, right after 2020, when everything was shut down?
Yeah.
So you're telling me that that because Biden got into office, that's the reason why inflation went up, and not at all because we had literally just had the worst economic year as a result of COVID shutdowns and COVID supply line issues and all of those.
That's not entirely, but I even from the beginning of this year, I've been able to drive again. I've been able to do this. There's other things. Gas prices have gone down. I don't like him as a person. I don't like the Orange Man as a person.
So to be clear, I'm just trying to understand.
No,
you're like
I take zero offense to anything.
Okay, so like you're telling me, yeah, like this definitely looks like 1933 Germany. But my gas prices are cheaper, so I'm gonna vote for that guy.
I have to look out, and I think this is how a lot of Americans see it. I have to look out for number one.
So by the way, just an interesting thing, I just looked it up just because I was curious. If we go month by month for gas prices, like national gas price average, gas prices were the lowest they had ever been the lowest they had ever been since COVID, because obviously during COVID gas prices were in the floor, right? But
yeah,
they were the lowest that they've ever been since COVID in December of 2024. They've actually gone up since then.
At least around where I live, it's been on a steady decline.
I mean, okay, like who might have tell you that like your experience isn't your experience? I'm just saying that like it's just not true that like gas prices have shot down. They've actually gone up slightly since the end of Biden's term. But like, look, so this is one of the things that I mean by like when I say MAGA is anti-science, it just seems like very much like MAGA doesn't really care about data. They don't care about like what's true about the world. They just care about like what's directly impacting them and what feels good.
And that's a big chunk of it. I think that's, as a species, that's kind of what we want.
No, but that's not just good for the species. We agree on that, reaction. Right?
No, I absolutely 1000% agree.
So I mean, look, okay, then we agree.
Am I saying you're wrong?
Okay, then we agree.
Am I saying you're wrong?
Okay, well, SMLG, I guess we don't have much more to talk about then, because I guess we agree. But thanks for coming up here and being reasonable with me. Okay.
Yeah, not a problem. Hey, man, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Likewise. Stay safe, okay?
Take care.
All right, we have some super chats to go over that are enormous. I don't know why Chessbutt super chat didn't come in, but Chessbutt sent $100. Big W for Chessbutt. Enormous W for Chessbutt. $100 for Maple. So if you guys don't know, Maple is a piece of software that I used to use in my research. It's very expensive though, and I recently lost access because I don't have university access anymore. So I haven't been trying to crowdfund this, but it's been being crowdfunded. So thank you, Chessbutt. And SML. So we have a few other super chats to go over, and then I'll bring up another guest. From Judas with the $5. Hope your heart survives. Look, me too. I think I'll be okay. SMLG with the $2 says, I'm in the chat, may I interject? You did. And Judas sent 5 gift memberships, which is awesome. I don't actually know how that works, but I appreciate it regardless. Neck2 sent $2 with a W for @chessbutt. Yeah, that's fair. Hugh Purr with the $5 says, Happy 4th. Thanks for being a champion of science. We need more science educators out here dealing with misinformation. Look, unfortunately, like, I wish I didn't have to, but it is the, like, one of the issues is that it seems like we have to. Like, just for job security, I have to. Judas with the $5 says, the irony of the guest. I try to be nice to people. And CJ with the $5, just support. You're doing a very important job by trying to educate the willfully ignorant. I appreciate that. And SMLG, thank you again for the $10. You were a lovely person, and I appreciate you being here. I just wish that you wouldn't have voted for the person that you did, but, you know, who am I to tell you who to vote for? All right, let's bring up a guest. Let us talk to Supert. Supert, how's it going?
Sir?
Can you hear me all right?
Can you hear me?
I can. Are you MAGA?
Oh, I'm ultra MAGA, baby.
Okay. And do you think that climate change is real and that humans are causing it?
It's been proven that it's a false science and it doesn't work.
Okay. Do you think that
Have you heard of
humans...
Dr. Catherine Hayhoe?
Sorry. Do you think that I just have 3 questions, then we can dive in. Do you think that humans evolved from non-human animals?
No.
Okay. And do you think that vaccines are generally safe and effective?
No.
Okay, great. So just so we're clear, you are doing the thing that I'm saying, but we can talk about any of these if you'd like to. So regarding climate change...
Okay, let's talk climate change. I've heard of Dr. Catherine Hayhoe. She's the leading climate change scientist, in quotes.
Sorry, what's their name?
Dr. Catherine Hayhoe.
How do you spell Hayhoe?
Hayhoe.
Like
Hayho. It's Texas Tech University. Look her up.
Did you call her a him? Did you call her a him?
No, I did not.
I thought you did.
She got fired from Texas Tech's energy department and moved into political science. We all know political science isn't a real science, right?
Well, yeah, it's just called that. Sure.
Yeah. So I have disproven all of her theories using simple common sense.
Okay. Do you have a degree in climate science or atmospheric science?
I have a super degree in common sense, a PhD in common sense.
Oh, what university awarded that?
School of Hard Knocks.
Oh, okay, so like, is that a publicly funded school or is it privately funded?
No, that's called learning. It's called reading. It's called doing your own research.
What was the last book you read?
Last book I read was The Great Replacement Theory by Alex Jones.
That checks out. Okay, so you would say that you've done research on climate change?
Yes, and it's all lies.
Okay,
it's all just the Earth. The sun is expanding. You're supposed to be a physicist, right? You understand that, right?
Help me out here. What's a greenhouse gas again?
Again, I told you, is the sun expanding? Yes or no?
Well, no. I mean, I asked a question. What's a greenhouse gas?
A greenhouse gas is saying that if you fart, you're warming the Earth. That's a lie.
Well, sorry, I asked what a greenhouse gas is, not what happens when you fart.
Methane, carbon dioxide.
No, I don't want examples. I want like what makes something a greenhouse gas.
I just told you, methane and carbon dioxide. That's what your science says.
Wait, no,
not Trumponian science.
What makes something a greenhouse gas?
Well,
I don't want examples.
The libtards say that it keeps in the
Wait, are you trolling me?
That's a lie.
Super, are you trolling me?
Infowars.com.
All right, okay, he was trolling. I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. No way. There is no way. All right, let's talk to somebody who's real. All right, let's bring on a guest from YouTube. Davis, how's it going? Davis? You there? Davis? No. See, the way I know he wasn't real is because when I asked him if he was trolling, he just shouted Infowars.com. Like he was obviously trying to like do a meme. Neopolia, how's it going? Neopolia, you are currently on the live. Neopolia McKnight? Neopolia? Neopolia? She's currently doing dishes. But she will hear me eventually. And then she'll be like, oh, that's me! And then she'll stop doing dishes. And then she'll talk to me, I think. So we'll give her a sec. Otherwise, you're going to lose your chance. It is very, very sad. All right. Lost your chance. Let's talk to Rickford. Rickford, how's it going?
Oh, not bad. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Are you MAGA?
Well, I mean, could you define that? I believe in the words "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, I mean somebody who believes in the message of Donald Trump, not just the slogan, but like the things that he's doing, thinks that the things that he's doing is good and right and valuable, and you know. Are you are you a Republican
general,
that's not an
yes.
ever-Trumper? Okay.
Again, I was in generally, yes. So far I actually believe him to be one of the most effective presidents in my lifetime so far.
Okay. And I just have a few questions that just to ask, just yes or no, and then we can elaborate on them later. We can talk about it just to kind of gauge where we stand. So, do you think that humans caused climate change?
Yes, not solely, but yes.
Okay. Do you think that humans evolved from non-human animals?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that vaccines are generally safe and effective?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my position is that those three questions that I asked have a far higher degree of getting no answers from people who support MAGA, from people who support Trump and his vision, and that is very worrying to me.
That's concerning to me too.
Why do you think that it is that MAGA is so overwhelmingly against scientific consensus in not just these things, but a lot of fields?
I'm not sure. Just because I mean, I haven't seen that specifically before, but I mean, obviously you've been asking people this, so you have some history with this.
I also have data that backs it up, by the way.
I believe you. I'll take it as a given. I think some of a reluctance to give an actual answer could be just these days with social media, people, not wanting to get trapped or cornered or led into a conversation that they don't want to be in. That could be an outlier. That could be some of it. I mean, my thing is that, like, if this is something you believe, talk about it. If you have a belief, it should be worthy enough to hold up to scrutiny.
Yep.
And that's why actually I wanted to say I enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to subscribe just because I like the way you're handling everything. A lot of times when I speak to people on the left, is that you get to this point where they just start screaming or this or that, or it comes down to emotions. It's like, look, can't we just have a conversation? It's not even win or lose. You should be able to discuss things and put it up to scrutiny. And that's
I
what
agree.
I believe.
And so, and the way that we do that, the way that we examine claims is with the scientific process, right? Like that is the most effective way we've come up with to examine claims. You have a hypothesis, and then you test it, right? So the question then is why is MAGA overwhelmingly against that? Because I agree, you should investigate claims, you should investigate explanations for things if you don't know what the answer is. But it doesn't seem like MAGA cares generally.
Well, I think that you could say on both sides, and this is just a theory and just a split moment theory. I would say on both sides, you have people hear things that they generally agree with and say, "Oh, that's good. Okay, that's me. I support this," and they don't know a lot of the history. It's like when people say "from the river to the sea," but you see all these videos how students can't tell you what river and what sea. It's like, well, maybe you should just do a little bit more research before you start go screaming something when you can't even defend it.
Look, so my question is,
or explain what it means.
So surely we agree that not everybody can do research on everything. I don't expect politicians to know. I don't expect politicians to have PhDs in biology, right? But I do expect them to listen to biologists, right? I do expect them to listen to climatologists, to paleontologists. I expect them to listen to like research physicians. I expect them to listen to the people who do know what they're talking about, because you can't be an expert on everything, but you do want to stay well informed. So why is it that, and this is an overwhelmingly MAGA problem, that MAGA is so averse to that?
This would just this would be I mean, there'd be, again, this is just a kind of split decision, or a split last minute, just making a quick assumption. Some of it is just going to be cognitive dissonance, where you're just like, no, I know what I believe, I'm not going to listen to anything else. And you see that on both sides.
Okay, but to be clear, you keep saying both sides. This is an overwhelmingly MAGA problem. Refusal to listen to scientific experts is an overwhelmingly MAGA problem.
Okay.
So I'm interested in why is that happening?
Is this just an in general question, or is it specific to something like climate change?
This is an in general question. This is true across the entire scientific spectrum.
Honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I don't have a real. I can't have a real answer for that. Anything I did would just be positing like a possibility or question. It could be that in general we see a lot of argument amongst the scientific community, and even when you have a majority belief in the scientific community, the problem is a lot of science, a lot of people are working off of theory, and which later on, as we've seen, and there's nothing wrong with this, but later on we see theories disproved, and how it isn't the case. And we thought this sounded really good and it matched, until we proved that it didn't. And we've seen this with a lot of cases across the decades. And I think you just get to a point where there's a general distrust towards scientific claims. I hear people make claims all the time. I'm like, well, did you read the data on that? Because what are you doing? Are you listening to a report on that actual study? Because you seem to be picking and choosing certain numbers of it. Like we can go back to like nutrition, and everything that the U.S., including the U.S. government, got on board with about all the grains and stuff that we consume, and milk and all these other things. And like, I grew up in this era. I'm 47 years old, and my wife and I grew up with certain things ingrained in our heads, and then we find out all these studies. Like, they've been having us eat this stuff and thinking this is what makes us stronger for years. And then, when you look at our nutrition compared to a lot of other countries, it's like, yeah, we eat a lot of stuff they won't even allow in food over there in Europe, or
Look, so my question is, suppose that you're a politician and you're trying to make an informed decision about, I don't know, let's say that you're tasked with voting for a new bill that, I don't know, would build windmills, not windmills, like wind turbines in some place, right? Wherever it might be. And you're tasked with basically weighing the pros and the cons. So you have to examine things like
Yes.
how will it affect electricity cost? How will it affect the local environment? How will it what are the resources that go into building these things? What are the you have to invest.
Maintenance.
All of these things, right? So if you wanted to figure out what the ecological impact is of the wind turbine, would you A, go off of your gut, or B, ask an ecologist?
Well, an ecologist, but more, yes.
Well, I mean, not to influence, not to make the decision for you, but to tell you what the impacts will be.
Yes, yeah, it's not to make the decision, but you need that information. You need
right.
So, ecological impact. You need biologists to do studies
of course,
on this.
Of course.
And
you should. So generally speaking, and I think that you probably agree, is that even though yes, science is wrong sometimes. If you I'm sorry, I wasn't. So even though science is wrong sometimes, if you bet with the scientists, if you bet with the scientific consensus on some particular thing, 99% of the time you'll get it right.
I think 99 is shooting a bit high. But
98,
I will say more
maybe.
often than not, yes.
So that is to say,
more often than not.
That is to say, it is good epistemology to just like, if you don't know anything about the topic, just believe what the scientists are telling you. You will be right more often than you will just by flipping a coin.
I'll believe the data.
Are you equipped to read ecological studies?
Some of them, sure.
Really, you think so?
I mean, it might take a little bit of time for me to decipher it, but I mean, I'm not a fool, I'm not an idiot, and again, that's what you have the consultation for, is to talk to people, like, what do these things show here,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the point, though. But you can't be an expert on everything. You can't read all of the studies. So you have two options. You can either kind of just listen to your gut or listen to what random people tell you, or you can listen to what scientists are telling you. Like, for example, I wouldn't ask you to, I think it would be ridiculous and irresponsible. Actually, you said you're 47, yeah?
Yeah.
So are you 47? That puts you being born, what, like 15 years before me, so 78, I guess, maybe around there? Okay, yeah, so you would be old enough. Do you remember the superconducting super collider that was going to be built in Texas? Do you remember that whole thing?
I remember something about one being built.
So the superconducting super collider was a particle accelerator that was proposed to be built in the 80s, and it was I guess it was proposed to be built in the 80s, and then it began construction. It was approved. Eventually, it got shut down, but I think it would be wildly irresponsible to so one of the things that it was meant to do was to study particle physics, right? And you might expect to have measured the mass of the top quark, or maybe you would hopefully find the Higgs boson, whatever it might be. And so one of the things that a politician, when voting on whether or not they should develop this machine or not, is what are the scientific outcomes that we can expect from this? Because if the scientific outcomes are amazing, then you might then you might want to fund it. If the scientific outcomes are not so great, then you might not want to fund it, right? But I think that you would be very, very irresponsible, and I think it would be ridiculous to ask a sitting senator to go read some particle physics literature in order to make up their... No, they should just listen to particle physics.
I mean, you don't need to really read the particle physics literature. You just need to know that this is something that we can do a lot of research with. And we may have certain projects and plans, but there are a lot of other things. And if you look at that, you discover things that you never would have known you would have discovered otherwise, without having these different facilities.
The point I'm making,
when we discovered that neutrinos are cyclical,
So the point just kind of like flew over your head, and not to say that with any disdain, but the point I'm getting at is that you said you would just read the studies, but no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't understand the studies. You have to listen to the people who do understand the studies. Turns out science is hard, and it takes training to understand what's going on.
There are studies on the scientific value of particle accelerators?
No, you would read the studies. You would read the studies on so the kinds of studies that a particle physicist would read is they would read like, okay, given what we currently know about particle physics, what can we expect to detect at this energy with this luminosity? What do we expect to detect given XYZ theory? Those are the things that go into building these devices.
But see, I don't care about that. Well, what I want to know is what type of impact is it going to have on the area around it? Is it going to pose a danger? What countermeasures do you propose? What type of energy draw?
Rickford,
are you producing your own
you're getting away from the hypothetical.
From the local power grid?
You're getting away from the hypothetical. The hypothetical is, or it wasn't even a hypothetical. It's a real thing. The point is that part of the decision-making process, when you're a senator, when you're a congressman voting on this machine, is you have to weigh the downsides, the cost, the environmental impact, with the upsides, which are, kind of what we expect to learn from building this machine. And so you have to take that into account.
You can't. Well, here's the thing: can you really place a value? Can you place a weight on learning?
Well, yes, we do. Obviously, we do. Now, different people will value it differently, but the point is you have to be informed.
Arbitrary, though.
You have to be informed on it.
That's
right?
largely arbitrary.
That's irrelevant. The point is that any given senator or congressperson will see, okay, well, we expect to learn XYZ thing if we build this device. We expect to learn more details about this, or we expect to find this this many X new particles, whatever. The point is that they have to know what is expected when you build a device like this. And maybe they don't think that matters, or maybe they think that's super important, but they still have to have that information in order to make an informed decision.
To some extent, I mean, like I said, the impact and everything, what you're saying is that what they're expecting to get from it, you can't always get that from scientific experiments. You might learn things that were not.
I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that, and maybe this is just not obvious to people who aren't in physics, but one of the things that you do when you write a proposal for a new machine, for a new experiment, is you say, look, this is what we expect to find. If we find other things, great, but this is what we expect to find. And it's typically, almost always, it's on the what you expect to find that funding is either granted or not granted. Because those are the things that we can be pretty certain of, or that we have high confidence in. They don't fund these things on enormous speculation, right? That doesn't get you funding. They fund it based off of what's it's expected to do. For example, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland.
Promised return.
Right, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, they expected to find the Higgs boson. That's why it was built. It was built to find the Higgs boson. That was its job, and it did. It did do what it did what they wanted it to do. They hoped that they would find microscopic black holes or supersymmetry, but that was not in the grant proposal. Well, it probably was for other possible discoveries. But the point is that when you so this is all to say, if you were trying to decide whether to build the Large Hadron Collider, and one of the scientists said, oh yeah, we have a reasonable expectation that if we build this machine, we will discover the Higgs boson. It is irresponsible to ask somebody making the decision to go check whether that's true in the literature. That's irresponsible.
No. You take that as its word. My point was that I wouldn't put as much weight in that. What I'm talking about is like if the scientist sits there and tells you, we're going to do this because we want to discover this, and in general, I'm going to sit there and say, okay, so we're looking at just whatever, expanding on the standard model or our understanding. It's like, okay, that's a good thing, that's a good cause. Well, my important thing is, learning about what the local impacts, dangers, and things like that are, and making sure that's taken care of.
Yeah, because and you would ask an ecologist for that. That's a question for an ecologist.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust a politician to be able to understand the data there.
Some of it, yes. But like I said, though, but it comes down to, like, if you say, hey, this is going to create 250 jobs locally, and it's going to do this, it's going to put so much of a drain on the local power grid, which can...
Yep, you'd ask an economist about that.
Right, but I mean, the point is that these are the things that they're going to need to know and find out. And say, okay, this all looks good. Sure, no problem.
Right, and to get that information, unless they happen to be an economist or unless they happen to be an ecologist, they should be asking the people who know those things. And yet, if we look at the political divide that exists in the United States right now, there is one party that is just generally against asking for expert opinion on things, asking for expert consensus on policy decisions, or on, to inform their political decisions. It's just not a thing. Like, are there any scientists in Trump's cabinet?
I wouldn't know, honestly.
For like in Department of Energy, like I would want like a scientist running that, or at least like a like a nuclear engineer or something. There are not, by the way, there are 0 scientists in Trump's cabinet. And like for the person running the CDC, I would expect them to be a medical doctor, right?
Is that the one that RFK Jr. is?
He runs the NIH, and I guess the CDC is a subset of the NIH.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even the leader of the NIH, I would expect them to be a medical doctor, right? It's the National Institute for Health. You have a physician running it, somebody with a medical degree, not like an old environmental activist who has brainworms. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It seems like they just don't care about expert consensus. They don't care about what's true about the world. They just care about what feels good and what appeals to their sensibilities.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm not really happy with his appointment, but I'm pretty sure those were made off of handshakes.
I mean, like, were you expecting anything better?
Not that I was expecting anything better. That's going to happen regardless.
So then why would you vote for somebody who would appoint such shitty people to the job?
Well, because I saw what happened with Biden, and good example is I said, if they really wanted Kamala Harris to be the first president, they would have had him step down and her assume the role, but they didn't do that because they knew if they were going to do that, they would have definitely.
What does this have to do with why you voted for Trump, who's like demonstrably, expert consensus, anti-expert consensus, anti-science, etc.?
Because he actually gets a lot of things done, and a lot of good.
And if by things done you mean like completely destroying American scientific supremacy, because he definitely did that.
I would have to see more on it, but it's and don't get me wrong, I'm definitely for science, but it doesn't mean I'm for science at the expense of a lot of other things. It's quid pro quo, this or that. You're going to make sacrifices. If America starts falling behind too much, we're definitely going to swing back in that direction.
Is that what you'd like to see? That, oh well, we'll make other decisions and then we'll fall behind and then we'll catch back up again, no problem.
I mean, have we fallen behind, or have we just fallen behind? Have we just lessened our lead, or?
So in the last 5 months, scientists have been fleeing the country.
Okay.
Like, that's not a good thing. I don't think anybody can agree that that's a good thing. Yeah, we're
I think
back.
so too.
Okay. Yeah. So this is all to say, NSF grants that have been, or the NSF funds a lot of university research. The number of grants awarded has been cut in half. NASA's science division budget has been cut in half. The NIH and the CDC's divisions have been significantly cut. This just means that like we have, like when you cut NASA's science division in half, what this means is that half of the scientists get fired. That's not fear mongering. That just means that you now have scientists that need to go find another job, and the only places that are hiring right now are outside the U.S.
I probably caught about half of this. Was this all in the Big Beautiful Bill?
Yes, this was all in the Big Beautiful Bill.
I honestly didn't think it was going to pass.
I mean, the guys you voted for wanted it.
Yeah, but I mean, and I didn't look into it very much because I didn't think it was going to pass. But I'm actually, I just saw like yesterday or today that I did. So I'm actually going to take a look into that to see actually what it impacts. But I know a lot of people are screaming about things that it didn't do or didn't do in the way that they said it did, because you always have people blowing things out of proportion, and both sides do it. I'm not saying anything to the left about that. I mean,
So to be clear, I looked at the budget proposals for both NASA and the NSF. I made videos about some of the projects that they're cutting. They're cutting telescopes that are in operation, that are the best telescopes in the world, that already exist in space. They're just cutting them, and now we just can't use them anymore for no reason. They're still providing data. We're just shutting them off, even though they're already in space.
Interesting. I mean,
and so people are losing their jobs.
There's no president that's been perfect. You know, there's no president that's done things exactly as I would have wanted. And there are people that I didn't vote for that I actually like plenty of things that they did. Like Clinton, I really had no problem with him. There were things I did, I don't think we should have done that, but okay. Because, nobody's going to do things exactly the way you want them to. And so,
Trump is doing things. So look, if you have social views or economic views that influence your politics here, like fine, whatever. The point is you can't say that you voted for. You can't say that your party is the party of science or is even neutral on science. It is explicitly anti-science if you voted for this guy. Like, it is the party of cutting university funding, so we can't have more grad students who do most of the research. It's the party of cutting lab funding. I have a friend who works at the Los Alamos National Lab for the Theoretical Physics Division. They all just got shuffled into the engineering department. That division just doesn't exist anymore. This is not like, we're just not talking about a party that cares about doing science at all.
I mean, that's definitely opinion. You could say they care less about science. You could say.
Could you give me an example of Could you give me an example of like a bill that the Republicans have ever pushed forward that actually is like good for science, good for like the scientific community, or good for basic scientific research or anything like that?
No, I've never specifically looked into that.
I think that you'd fail to find any in the last 20 years.
That's possible. That may be possible.
And that, as somebody who surely I value science a lot. I think it's very easy to just say, no, it doesn't really matter. But like, that's part of what makes this country great, or at least was what made the country great. And, I mean, look, if you're willing to say, yeah, MAGA is anti-science, but look, I don't like immigrants, so I'd rather have $37 billion to ICE, that's on you. But at least we agree that MAGA doesn't care about science.
I mean, like I said, that's possible. I'm actually going to go ahead and look into that a little bit because, like I said, that's never been a focus or a concern because I've always felt that like the projects that are important are going to get funded, whether by the government or by privately. They're going to get. I mean, that's what scientists do. You're writing, you're applying for grants.
Yeah, and
you definitely have to have some experience in that.
So private funding, with the exception of one organization that I can think of, one major organization, the Simons Foundation, doesn't fund basic research. It just doesn't. You will never find a privately funded space telescope. It doesn't exist. You know who does? Governments, space agencies, right?
Governments.
Yeah. Because basic research is valuable, right? Basic research, even though we don't know what the outcomes is, it always ends up being valuable in the future. But apparently we just don't care about that anymore. Anyway, Rickford, you've been a delight, but I should move on to another guest. Anything else you want to talk about?
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Do you have anything specific you would suggest looking up?
I mean,
I don't know if
so just go take a look at the NASA. So what I would suggest for anybody who's interested is go look at the NASA budget, the fiscal year 2026 NASA budget request. You should, if you look that up, then you'll see that the space exploration part of the budget stays, I think it might even increase a little bit. And then you go look at the science division and you'll see it's cut in half. And then you can go look at the individual projects and you'll see certain parts of the science division were completely dismantled. No part of the science division, with I think one exception, got any extra funding. So yeah, go look into that. Go look into the fiscal year 2026 NASA budget request. And yeah, they'll have the information that you might be interested in.
All right. Yeah, I've got some stuff online already.
All right, Rickford. Thanks for being here.
What do I call you?
Oh, call me Blitz.
Blitz, right on. thanks, Blitz. I appreciate everything, and I'll see you next time.
Take care. All right, let's bring another. Oh, we have some super chats to read. We have a super chat from Hard Work with the $2. Thank you so much, Hard Work. Blitz, you can do month-to-month Mathematica sub. So I don't know how to use Mathematica. I've never used Mathematica in my life. I've used Maple for 10 years, so it's the software I'm familiar with. And second, the kind of calculations I'm working on, I have a friend who uses Mathematica, or friend/colleague. Maple seems to be better at the kind of calculations that I'm trying to do anyway. All right, let's talk to, I guess Dr. Whalen's been waiting for a while. Dr. Whalan. Trovalan. Dr. Whalan, how's it going?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you MAGA?
I am. I guess you can ask me your questions. Yeah, I'm MAGA.
All right. Do you think humans cause climate change?
I do not, and that's what I would like to talk to you about.
Okay, but I got to ask the other two anyway. Do you think that humans evolved from non-human?
Absolutely.
Okay, and do you think that vaccines are generally safe and effective?
Generally safe and effective, yes. More than that, whatever, like the third greatest invention in all of humanity that have extended lives, and yeah, vaccines are great. But
all right,
but you just can't. You can't put a blanket on there and say more vaccines are better. I don't think
that's why I said generally. Like, I'm sure that there have been there have been cases where like we developed a vaccine, or like, you know, somebody tried to develop that vaccine and it didn't turn out well. But like generally they are.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So you want to talk about climate change?
Climate change, yeah.
What about it?
So you know, I just, again, in general, I do not believe that humans have had a huge impact on climate change, and I think there's some great people that have some good ideas on this that get ostracized. You know, John Coleman, who founded the Weather Channel, when they started going real left and talking about all this climate change stuff, he was like, no. And he's a big outspoken proponent against climate change, saying that
But he's not a climate scientist. He's a meteorologist.
Okay, good. Dr. Matthew Wailicki is all over.
I don't know who that is.
He is a climate scientist, and he's all over this app, TikTok. And he is very knowledgeable, and he is,
what's
same
his
sort of
name?
thing. Wailicki, Weiliki, I think. There's another guy I know that the left really hates, but I think he's the best person who knows all of the facts, all of the science, all of the data. He can refute it very quickly. Dr. Willie Soon, but because he worked for Exxon one time, so he's, you know, so now everything that he says, every scientific study that he tells you about,
isn't Willie Soon a physicist? Yeah, why would we trust him? Yeah, he's an astrophysicist and engineer. Why would we trust him on climate science?
So when you start talking about what climate change is, and at some point you do. So we can talk about how that's another thing I want to get into. But let me finish this thought. We want to get into well. So let's do this. Let's go off on. No, let me finish this thing about Willie Soon. So at some point you have to tell me the science of how carbon actually being less than 1% actually increases the temperatures, and you should be able to take a graph of this is the carbon amount in the atmosphere, and then this has been the temperature, and then they should match pretty closely, and it does not match at all.
I mean, I could pull up a chart for you right now, if you want, but it's not going to look good for you.
Okay.
Just pulled up the first thing that pops up.
Yeah, is this the 200-year chart, or is this the 300,000 or the?
This is
300,000
years. Whatever. It's 140 years.
140 years. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So this would be one way to show.
Just to be clear, do you think that? So I'm just going to show that there's at least in the last 140 years, there's a very obvious correlation. I think it's this one. Right here.
Okay.
Very obvious correlation, right?
Yep. So if the Earth was in a warming trend, innately, which I think that everybody kind of, if you go back 100,000 years, you can see that we're in a slight warming trend right now. If you again, that data means a lot less. The carbon, if you put the carbon on top of that,
right,
the
so
carbon
that's why you have
has
to do a
changed
data
a lot.
analysis, and it turns out that you can actually derive a causal relationship between the anthropogenically emitted CO2 and the global mean surface temperature anomaly. This has been explicitly shown.
I have never heard that before.
Okay, let me show you.
Okay.
This is like I don't want to say it's revolutionary, but it was a big deal paper. Came out, it was published. It was published in Scientific Reports like 8 years ago. Let me pull it up. Here we go. Oops, that's not the right one. Here we go. On the causal structure between CO2 and global temperature. So this paper, you can read it. Here it is, so you can screenshot it and read it later. But the important point, and like I've read through this whole study, it's interesting, and they use like causal time series analysis techniques. But they in the abstract, they explicitly state it. Specifically, it is confirmed that the former, especially CO2, are the main causal drivers of the recent warming. In fact, they even go and they look at previous instances of climate change as well. In fact, they say this. On paleoclimate timescales, however, the cause-effect direction is reversed. Temperature changes cause subsequent CO2 CH4 changes. So they actually, using their same analysis, they derive that that CO2 is driving the recent warming recently. But if you use the exact same method of analysis, you find that temperature changes were driving CO2 emissions or CO2 released in the distant past.
I'm definitely, I did screenshot that. I'm going to go take a look at that.
Okay.
If you could change my mind, I would just love it, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So let's talk about one of.
Wait,
so
hold
you
on,
agree
hold
that
on. I want to ask. Are you
sure?
Do you have like a degree in climatology or geophysics or something like this?
I do not. I have a doctorate in nursing.
Okay, so like, what makes you think that climate change is not real, or is not caused by humans, rather?
I think that climate change has been used by the political establishment to kind of to keep us in line, to drum up something. If it bleeds, it leads. There's always got to be something bad. And I remember when I was in 6th grade watching a video, and everybody was very somber, and they said, if we keep going like this, then when you go out and play, by the time you're 15 years old, you're going to have to put a spacesuit on, and because the sun's rays are going to be beating down, and you're never going to be able to go outside.
What was the video that you watched that said that?
It was I mean, it was, I don't think it was on PBS or anything, but it was like a video that they shared in the classroom. It was like a school sanctioned video that they played that really got us all riled up and whipped up about climate change, and how there's so much angst about climate change right now, and I mean, nobody dies from climate change. It's not a real thing.
Wait, no, they absolutely do.
Who dies from climate change?
So that we can study the effects of climate change. In fact, it's about every year. You can calculate this. About $143 billion per year is attributable. These are extreme events, right? Extreme weather events, droughts, fires, etc. About $143 billion
has nothing
per year.
to do with the climate.
Please. Okay. Well, hold on. Let's let me pull up the study. Here we go. So this is a paper that was published in Nature Communications, very reputable journal. This is a paper that's talking about the global costs of extreme weather that are attributable to climate change. Not all extreme weather is attributable to climate change, but you can attribute some of it to climate change, and that's what the analysis of this paper is doing. So they find that $143 billion per year is the costs of extreme events that are attributable to climate change. The majority, 63% of this, is due to human loss of life. So yeah, you can attribute deaths to climate change. It is a thing. Not directly, of course, although you could say directly as a result of like heat waves, but Like, this is not nobody's claiming that that like, oh, the temperature increased by 1 degree, so like somebody's just gonna like fall dead. No, but that's why we don't call it global warming anymore. We call it climate change because there's a lot of things that change. Anyway,
I think another thing that that the climate people like to talk about is the hurricanes. That Al Gore movie was big on this. Hurricanes getting worse because the climate is bad, and it's just absolutely junk science. It's just not true. Now what does go up is the dollar amount of damage goes up. And you say, oh my gosh, this is the most expensive hurricane ever because people keep moving to the beach. Al Gore, when he made all the money off that movie, he bought a huge house on the beach. And the whole point of his movie was that the ocean levels are rising.
Just to be clear, you agree that the last 20 years have been like the worst 20 years for hurricanes in like recorded history, right?
There have been a few years that have been very bad, yes.
Like we've had, there's been like 50 hurricanes that are category 4 or higher. Make landfall in the last 20 years or something like this.
Yeah, go back since they've started recording hurricanes, and it's not that big of a deal.
Right. So what is true is that those extreme weather events, hurricanes in particular, are not solely attributable to climate change. That's why you do an attribution analysis, which is what that paper did. The point is that you can attribute some extreme weather events to climate change, and that has real costs. But look, I asked a while ago, and I don't want to get off topic. I asked, or rather, I didn't ask this. You mentioned, if I could change your mind, that'd be awesome, but you don't think I can. Look, you have a doctorate in doctorate of like nurse practitioning or like something like that. I don't know how that works, but the point is would you trust a climatologist to tell you that you're wrong about your field?
So you're going to have to tell me why, and I can give you an example of how this has happened. But no, I'm not just because I'm not going to appeal to authority just because you're an ER physician and I'm in the boardroom arguing with the way that we need to treat patients. And you say, well, I've never done it that way. And I've been doing this 30 years. I have to take you to the science. I have to say, look, this is the science that shows this is the best way to treat these patients, and this is the way we have to do it. I'm not just going to roll over.
Yeah, right. But here's the thing.
So I'm not always going to listen to
appealing
climate science. The field of climate science is in universities, and if you don't toe the line that global warming is this whole thing, just like Matt Wilecki talks about a lot on his TikTok channel, they don't want you in the club. They don't want to play with you. Willie Soon, same sort of thing.
Willie Soon's not a climatologist, so his opinion doesn't matter
but he's a scientist, and he's a science communicator, and he can explain these things.
He is not a science. Take that out of your mouth. He is not a science communicator. He's a conspiracy theorist. But anyway, look, the point is
because he took money from.
I'm in the middle of a sentence. I'm in the middle of a sentence. So look, you could say that yes, absolutely. Like individual scientists can have. They can be wrong about things, they can be misunderstanding things, they could be bought off, they could be corrupt, whatever it might be. But the point is just from a purely statistical point of view, if the vast majority of the experts in a field understand the data to be saying one thing, and then like 5 guys say, oh no, actually the data's the other way, it's just good epistemology to just trust the vast majority of the experts in that field with regards to their field. Like it's just like obviously the case. Like
in general, you're right that there's so much.
And so like and let's just think about the epistemology here. If what's more likely, that 98% of climatologists are wrong or corrupt about climatology, or that you just don't understand something about climatology?
Is this the widely debunked Scientific American fact that you're bringing up here, 99.6 or whatever?
No, I'm not citing any particular thing. It's just like we just all agree that yes, scientists, climatologists agree that human-caused climate change is a thing. That this is like a vast majority.
Because you live and you work. I agree that people who study climate science are left, and if they're right, then they're kicked out of their university, and they're not their work is not
you say
published.
You say you agree. I didn't make that claim, so you're not agreeing with anybody.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You said I agree that XYZ. Who are you agreeing with?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what I agree. I'm sorry.
You said I
don't
agree
what I
that most climate scientists are left, blah, 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 blah. I didn't say that. I just don't know who you're agreeing with.
Oh, I mean, you wouldn't, give me that most, 90% of people on all college campuses are far left leaning. You can see by the where they
no,
spend
they're
their.
No, they tend to be liberals, but they're not generally far left. No.
Okay, I mean, if you look at where they spend their money on presidential candidates, then you see almost all of their money goes to
who? Like the grad students are spending money on presidential. Wait, just to be clear, do you think that like Joe Biden is far left?
Yes.
Dude was like a moderate Democrat. He was like a pro-union, like pro-capitalism, like dude opened up more oil drilling than any president before him. Like he was. What's far left? Do you think that far left is being
it's like saying that he had the best economy in history because it had just come after a collapse, and then he took credit for getting not even back up to normal.
The people who are genuinely far left thought that Biden was basically a fascist. They thought that he was basically a Republican in all but name. So like I don't know like on what grounds you think that Biden is far left. Unless you're just saying anything that's not like Trump MAGA is far left.
I have a lot of as a matter of fact, I don't know many people at all on the right. Almost everybody I know is on the left, and most of them are far left, and they all love Biden.
When you say far left, what do you mean?
I mean left in the sense of left of center, as the Democratic side, as larger government, as more spending, more taxation,
so
more
when you
regulation.
Say far left, you just mean liberal.
Liberal, yes.
So okay.
There are some political commentators who don't like that term, but
so liberal is like
and more.
So liberal is like what Nancy Pelosi is and what Joe Biden is and like what most of the Democratic establishment is. When you say far left, I hear like socialist, which they're definitely not, right?
I mean, I think the further away you get from, I think higher taxation and more regulation and
that's
more
just
government
intervention. That's just like Keynesian capitalist economics. That's just like
absolutely, which is further away from Friedman and so
you just think like liberal economic policy, like which is like the right wing parties in most of the world like just endorse Keynesian economics.
Yeah, so
think that they're far left.
I think of government that the most important thing that a government does is what they do with money, is how they spend the money, how they take the money. I think that's the most important thing that our government does.
That's fine, but look. I mean, we're super off topic. But the point is that like generally speaking, academics tend to be liberal because educated people tend to be liberal. Why that's the case might be because liberals tend to be more willing to change their views on things, and education tends to force you to change your views. I think it's more because they have time to sit around and philosophize, and they think about how they can make the world better, and think that they're doing great things. Like are you talking about like grad students? Because grad students. I'm just talking about research. No, I'm talking about just in general. I'm not even talking about researchers or people educated people who've had the privilege of graduating high school. People who have been able to go to college. Which everybody should have, by the way. Absolutely. I think education is the civil rights issue of this millennium. I think it is the number one most important thing. And it has been taken over by teachers unions. And we spend more money per child than any other country in the world, 5 times more. Why are we reducing the availability of like Pell Grants and such? Pell Grants are going to universities, right? Yeah. Yeah, but what we keep doing is we keep subsidizing more money for students to go to college,
they get crap degrees in underwater basket weaving, and then they can't get a job afterwards.
Give me an example of a degree. Can you give me an example of like a person who actually got a degree in underwater basket weaving?
No, but
okay.
For instance,
so is this just like a meme?
Got a degree in Spanish not long ago. And
well, wait. So hold on. Do you think that getting a degree in Spanish is not valuable?
She took money from the government to get a degree in Spanish that she will never use for anything. And now she works in insurance, and she said, I'm not paying that money back.
That wasn't my question. Do you think that a degree in Spanish is not valuable?
Absolutely no. I think I got minored in Spanish. I think it's very valuable.
So then why do you have a problem?
But I shouldn't have to pay for it. I shouldn't have to pay for her to get a degree in Spanish.
Why should you have to pay for anybody to go to high school?
Well, that's what Pell Grants are tax money that is going to people to go to school.
You said that you value education.
And then the universities just raise the price of tuition, and it ends up just costing the taxpayers more. At some point, the universities have got us, if we've got all this great research going on and all this stuff, we need to start making our own money from it and not just charging it to the students who get paid by the government, by the taxpayers, and then it's a messed up system.
I agree that we should regulate things like bureaucratic size of universities and so on. I'm actually super on board with that. But the solution isn't preventing people who can't afford to college from going to college. That seems regressive under your view.
Okay, so let me just tell you, I live just outside of downtown Dallas, and there is El Centro is the community college here, and it is fabulous. There is world-class talent professors there, and you can take a class for $45 an hour or something like that.
Okay,
you can get a degree.
You can't get a bachelor's degree from a community college, right?
Absolutely, you can.
You can get an associate's degree from a community college. Otherwise, it's a bachelor's granting institution. In which case, it's not qualified as a community college.
Okay, well, maybe it's called El Centro. I don't know if it's part of the Dallas County Community College campuses, but I'm pretty sure they offer bachelor's degrees.
Let's find
Specifically in nursing is what I'm thinking about.
So they're transfer program. So they offer associate's degrees. They offer a bachelor's of science in nursing. They offer a bachelor, or they bachelor. Well, that's not a bachelor's. That's a bachelor's of applied science. That's the only bachelor's degree that they offer. It looks like.
Okay. But you can get a lot of the learning done there and go to
lots of people go to
state school.
Yeah, lots of people go to community college for the first 2 years, and then they transfer to a state school or something like that. But the point is that the big beautiful bill is preventing people who would have otherwise wanted to go to college or wanted to, go to grad school and become an expert so that they can contribute to the country in, a scientific way. It's just preventing people from doing that.
I don't know that that's preventing those people from doing that. I think there's if that work is important enough, then if a business needs those people enough, then the business will pay for those people to go to the school. There's ways that the capitalist market can get around doing it.
So just to be clear, do you think that basic scientific research is valuable?
If I am paying for it, when I go to my job, if I pay 30 cents out of every dollar for it, no. I won't pay for nothing.
7 cents a year.
Keep foreign invaders off the soil and deliver the damn mail.
What if you pay 7 cents a year?
I pay a lot more than that.
Would you pay 7 cents a year for, I don't know, something like 1,000 scientists, maybe or probably closer to 100 scientists, to do groundbreaking research on Jupiter? 7 cents is all you would pay.
I mean, the problem, if it's just that 7 cents, it's hard to say no to. But when you say okay to the 7 cents, then we're doing the stuff on Saturn, we're doing it on Uranus, we're doing it on this, we're doing it, and the next thing you know, it's another,
it's another dollar,
$800 I'm paying a year, and I don't want to do that.
So, what do you think? I'm just curious, what you think the budget of NASA was prior to the big beautiful bill?
This is going to be a wonderful point. I don't know what it was, but a private company came along and blew NASA out of the water.
There's been no private company that has done any scientific research that NASA was doing. There's not a single one.
You don't think that Tesla has improved the rocket engine?
They don't
the
have
Raptor
any,
engine.
They
you don't
they
think
don't
is
do
way better than their first generation engine was?
So they're roughly three large divisions of NASA. There's space exploration, which focuses on building rockets to put people and like probes on other planets, right? They're the rocket builders. Then there's aeronautics, which is building rockets. Then there's the science division. The science division these are the people who build telescopes. These are the people who analyze data. These are the people who develop the machinery, develop the instruments that are necessary that go into the telescopes and go into the probes and things like this. SpaceX does none of that. They do none of the actual science. They have rocket. SpaceX is rocket engineering. They don't actually do science at SpaceX. So, no private company is doing this. There's not a single privately funded space telescope in existence. So I'll ask again, what do you think the...
Just because they're not doing science, that doesn't mean that they're not improving the quality of the rocket. They're having
That
patents.
wasn't my question. I was asking about the scientific, like the basic scientific research that's being done. So
okay, you're right. They're not doing scientific research.
They're not doing scientific research. It's just not a thing. Now they're like innovating on like engineering things in the form of rockets and stuff, and that's cool for them. But what do you think?
It's cool for people who use Starlink. It's cool for people who.
I agree. I agree. What do you think the scientific budget was?
I don't know.
In 2024. Well, so I'm gonna put it in terms of people money. So like per capita, how much it was budgeted in 2024. It was about $20 a year. The entire NASA science budget, about $20 a year.
Yeah, but it's again, you talk about one thing, and if I'm going to go down the list and put a check and an X next to every little thing, if that's the point that I get to do, then I'd like to do that.
This is the entirety of the NASA science budget. It's $20 a year.
Yes.
So how much money do you think you're saving as a result of the big beautiful bill from cutting the NASA science budget to what it became?
We need to cut everything everywhere. We are spending money on a credit card. That's why we need somebody like Trump in office who can. The only person who's ever been able to balance the budget is Newt Gingrich. And okay,
you think that we should hold on? You think that we should reduce the deficit? Then why did the big beautiful bill increase the deficit?
But Trump is not the one who is in charge of the budget. That is the Congress.
It's literally his bill.
I think the worst thing that Trump has done, and the most important thing that I think that the government does is spend money, and Trump has not been a good steward of our money. I agree, but it's better than the Democrats would have been. Somebody is going to have to eventually put their foot down and say stop with all of this nonsense and quit spending money on a damn credit card that I'm going to have to pay for in 50 years.
So I'm just a little confused. So like, you think that generally Republicans have been better about deficit spending?
The only time that we've ever had a balanced budget was under Newt Gingrich.
It was under Bill Clinton.
In the modern era.
I was under Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and remember what he said: the era of big government is over. Remember that? And it's not true. Like, the government's gotten bigger. The government is so much bigger now than it was when it was under Bill Clinton. What, 10 times bigger? It's enormous.
Yeah, sure.
Our government shouldn't be
like this was under
be
Bill
small
Clinton.
and
like,
limber.
Republicans tend to increase spending, not decrease spending. Or rather,
what, are you talking about Republican presidents? Are you talking about Republican Congress? Or are you talking about
presidents? Because despite what you
may
think,
so presidents don't write the budget; they just sign it. Congress writes the budget.
Despite what you may think, the budget bill, the current one, and basically all past budget bills are highly influenced by the president's bully pulpit, right? Like highly influenced by it. So much so that Trump is calling this bill his bill because it was the bill that he wanted to get passed. And then his goons in Congress put it, voted on it, and so on and so forth. Like this.
Yeah, if I like a bill, then the only thing that matters to me is, are we spending more money than we're taking in? And if we are spending more money than we're taking in, then I don't like the bill. I think it's wrong. That's where we should start.
Okay, so to be clear, do you think that this bill was bad? The big beautiful bill?
Yes, it spends more money than it takes than we take in. Yes.
Okay. So you would like to remove all the people who voted yes for it?
Remove all the people that voted yes for it. I think no. I think that there's reasons why they did. I think it's better than what a Democrat would have done. I think we increased the debt ceiling by less than we would have.
Democrats actually would have kept the deficit smaller, because the Democrats wouldn't have given like a several $1 trillion tax cut.
I don't think the answer is to increase the taxes. I think the answer is to decrease the spending.
So there's a few ways to resolve it. So you can either decrease the spending, keep your taxes the same. You can increase your taxes, keep the spending the same, or you can do both, right? What you shouldn't do is increase your spending and decrease your taxes. And that's what the GOP did. That's just what the GOP did. What the Democrats would do is they would keep the spending the same, and they would Democrats generally don't do tax cuts, so they would at least not increase the deficit more by reducing the income. So
yeah, I again, from my perspective as an income, as a payer of that income, I think the most important thing is the income, and they need to spend less of my dang money, and they need to do a better job. And if that means cutting the military, if that means cutting NASA, if that means cutting everything across the board, I don't care. But we need to. Right? We cannot start from a point that we're putting money on a credit card. We make too much money for that.
But you like education, right? So we do have to spend some money.
Just pouring money. This is the perfect example of just pouring money at something doesn't make it better. It actually makes it worse.
It costs money to run schools,
teachers' unions have hijacked education. The whole COVID thing was shutting down schools.
I'm sorry. Does it cost money to run a school, or is it free?
Yeah. Does that money come from the government, from my taxes, or does it come from property taxes?
Where do you think property taxes come from? Is it the government taxing you?
I pay the check to the Dallas County tax collector, and they spend that much. Yeah.
The Dallas County tax collector, is that the government?
Yeah, no, yeah, but they didn't increase my property taxes. I want my property taxes to go down too, yes, but I'm willing to pay them for better schools. I think the amount of money I pay for school, they just built a nice one right here next to me, two actually, but I don't think that they're even spending that money well, but if they were getting better outcomes for that money, if we were having better math scores and better reading scores, and we were graduating more students that could read and they could do basic math and they could get jobs and they could be productive members of society, I'd say that's great, but that's not what's happening. We keep increasing the money. They keep buying or paying for more administrators and more secretaries and more teachers' aides and more whatever. The teachers' rate, the amount of money they make goes up because they've worked there for a long time and they deserve it. And a lot of teachers are
care about education, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I care about education a lot, and generally I think that if you want to incentivize the best educators, you would want to attract the best people, which would mean that you'd have to pay them well, right?
So I would say if we could do it by whoever's kids in there, now you got to level out the kids evenly in all the classes, and then say whichever teacher's kids get a higher test score, that teacher is going to make the most money. If your kid, I went to Plano schools, very good schools, and I had a teacher who was big into the union and real high up at the school, and she was my world history teacher, and I had a really tough world history teacher for half the year, and then the second half of the year, somebody said, "This grade is real easy. You should take this class." I transferred to her class. We did literally nothing. We sat around. She wasn't even in the class most of the time. She was doing, her administrator stuff, and as long as nobody told their parents, as long as nobody said anything, we never took a test. Everybody got an A. The first few days we sat around a big circle and we played the name game.
Yeah,
everybody had to know everybody else's name. There's worthless teachers out there and we've got to get rid of them. And if we would have taken a test that said how much money she gets, she would have gotten less money. But because she was high up, she could do whatever the hell she wanted.
Generally speaking, there is this phenomenon in pedagogy, which is whenever you set a and actually this is a far more general, it just goes beyond pedagogy, but whenever you set a goal, the optimization that ends up leading to success with respect to that goal generally tends to be
I'm sorry, you just broke up. Can you start that over?
Yeah. And I don't remember what the law is called. There's like a law of sociology or something like this, where essentially if you set a goal, like for example, if your goal is to improve test scores, then what ends up happening is that people only teach for the tests, which doesn't actually lead to increased
teach to the test. Yeah.
Is it the Pygmalion effect?
Absolutely.
But and so this.
No,
is,
I know
this
what you mean. I know what it is.
So and this is like really a bad thing to do, to say, well, we'll pay you more if your students do better on this test. That's a terrible policy decision, because then you end up with people who can take, or you end up with students who can succeed on this test and then don't know anything, right?
But if you just pay teachers, whatever, by how many years they've worked there, you end up with a bunch. They have no incentive for the students to do well. They have an incentive for that student to not be disrupting their class next year, so they pass them along to the next year. And then you get students who graduate knowing nothing, and the teachers don't care.
Yeah. So what do you think is the best way to attract the best teachers? When you're hiring, what's the best way to attract good
teachers? I think there's been a great way that's been utilized. So as a matter of fact, in Katrina, where Katrina was in
New Orleans.
Louisiana, New Orleans. I'm sorry, because the schools were hit so hard down there. The government has said, the charter schools, y'all can come in as long as you meet these. They relaxed the requirements on the charter schools a little bit to make it something to where they can actually do this. And a lot of the schools, at least as of a couple of years ago, a lot of the students in New Orleans were going to charter schools, and they were doing way, way better on standardized test scores that everybody in the country takes. That's a kind of a level, better level playing field than. The fact is, you don't just teach to the test. You can't just teach somebody to the test. You've got to do other stuff too. And we always did some of that teaching to the test in the schools I went to. In the 2 weeks before the test, you take questions like that and you do, that sort of thing. But the other times you're doing literature, you do other stuff in your grammar and other stuff that kind of helps and adds to that. But if you can't pass that standardized test, we've got to have some kind of ruler somewhere that says how people are doing, right?
Well, yeah, sure.
And it can't be how long you've been a teacher.
The point is that generally, and this is an obvious answer. I don't know how you could miss this. Offer new hires a more competitive salary. That's how you attract better talent, right?
Right. Yes, I think
obviously, and so that means increasing teacher wages, not decreasing them. Oh, where'd he go?
There, hello.
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay. We can increase the wages on the teachers that are doing well, and the teachers that aren't doing well, they don't need to be teaching anymore. This isn't a charity. If the teachers aren't teaching the students well,
agree.
And they can't
you just need to have a good way to do it.
You
just need to have a good way to establish who's teaching well, and just like a single standardized test that affects their salary is not a particularly good way, I don't think. Anyway, this is all to say. I think that if you're pro-education, I can't see why you would be against scientific research. That seems super, super contradictory. So, but I mean, maybe you just have contradictory worldviews, which I guess is fine.
So let me tell you this. So I'm doing, I don't know if I don't know if it's scientific research. I'm doing research right now on, what CPR is when somebody's heart stops, right?
Yeah.
And how there's things that you're supposed to do when somebody's heart stops, and we have mannequins now that can measure that. And I'm looking to see how well people are actually doing that. Everybody's got a CPR card, everybody's certified, but can they really do it? And what I'm finding is that the benchmarks that are set, where most people who have been nurses for 20 years can't meet those benchmarks, even though that's what we're supposed to do.
Sure.
And you don't record it when a patient really dies because you're worried about other things, right?
Sure.
But we're nowhere near meeting those benchmarks. So I'm doing this research. This is I don't get paid for it. It's something I'm interested in, so I do it. I'm a CPR instructor. I see what people do. I'm a nurse educator. I've presented at a couple of conferences, and
so is this like a funded research project, or is this just like a hobby thing?
It's not funded, but I do it at work. My work paid for my mannequin. My work obviously pays for the time that I do it. I do it on the nurses that I work with.
It's like endorsed by your work. That's fine.
Yes, and then we're doing the entire 130,000 employees in our hospital system are taking up the challenge too, and so everybody's going to start doing it.
Do you think that basic science is worthwhile?
That is basic science, and absolutely it's worthwhile.
Okay, so then and you know that generally speaking, private organizations don't fund basic science.
This is a private organization, and I guess they're funding it. They paid for the mannequin. They're funding the basic science.
You're not going to get a, well, I actually don't know if that is basic science. Basic science is generally research not directed for a particular application, but rather research directed to learn more about something. Maybe it's basic science. Yeah. I mean, chat is yelling at me that CPR research is not basic science, but suffice it to say, things like investigating, I'm just trying to think of examples, like how cell walls interact with certain chemicals. Like that's like with no like particular goal in mind, just like trying to figure out, well, what happens when XYZ and a cell wall do something together. That would be like basic science. Or like, studying the moons of Jupiter. That would be basic science, right?
Running the scientific theory, having a hypothesis and rejecting or accepting your null hypothesis based on the
basic science is
outcome of whatever test you do.
Basic science, I don't mean like kind of like easy or like fundamental science. Basic science is like kind of the scientific science for its own sake, rather than science to meet some end. That's what I mean by basic science. That's the general term for it. Fundamental or pure science. It's the branch of science focused on expanding knowledge and understanding of fundamental principles and mechanisms of the natural world.
Okay.
So this would be non-applied science. This is stuff like, building gravitational wave detectors in Washington, right? It's somebody said in the comments, it's exploratory, it's open-ended, right? Do you think that that's worthwhile?
Absolutely.
Okay, but private organizations will never fund it because
but again, it's how much am I going to pay for it? That's the thing.
So like for the Chandra X-ray Observatory, it's 7 cents a year.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll pay the 7 cents, but I want you to give me a list of every cent that I'm spending on everything, and I'll put a check or an X next to each one of them.
Yeah, you can go find it. It's in the budget. It's in the budget. You just have to pull it out.
But can I do that?
I literally have it on the other screen.
Yeah, no, I can't put an X if I don't want to pay for it, right? It's all or nothing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's how.
So what I'm saying is,
work.
if you are not able to, as a government, if you are not able to spend less money than you take in every year, our GDP is enormous, and if you can't live within those means, somebody needs to slap your hand and take the credit card away, take the car keys away, and you need to be grounded for a little bit. And if we need to shut the government down, whatever that means, but we cannot be spending more money than we take in, period. We should have a balanced budget amendment. We should, in a wartime, it doesn't matter. We cannot spend more money than we take in, not with this huge credit card balance that we have.
Seems irrelevant to the question.
Okay, so yeah, I'll pay your 7 cents for your thing, but I want to be able to choose which ones I can and can't. Now, if I'm going to end up paying another $1,000 a year for these,
that's not how society works.
Okay,
we vote on people,
then I'm going to continually advocate for less government taxation and less government spending.
Okay, so you're advocating against Trump and all of the Republicans who just passed an increased deficit bill, right?
I've said that I do not think it was right. It was something that was politically expedient that I think Trump had to do. And if going forward, if he keeps spending more money, then
I'm sorry. Why did he have to do it? He didn't have to cut taxes. He didn't have to increase funding to ICE and to the DoD. He didn't have to do those. He could. Right?
Yeah, he could have.
So why did he have to?
I just think that it was the politically expedient thing to do. He had to give some places in order to take other places. But again, if Trump continues to spend and spend and spend, then I'll be speaking out against him too.
He did that for his first 4 years. This isn't like, oh, I didn't know he would do this. He did the same thing in the first 4 years.
Well, this is what everybody does. It's to the extent to which they do it. And I think that Trump is going to overspend less than Biden.
I mean, historically
or less
speaking,
than Harris would have.
It's just false, like historically speaking.
Again, you're looking at who the president is, and it's the Congress who makes the budget bills.
The president signs the bill, right? The president
absolutely, and
significantly influences it. So then why are
if the president doesn't sign the bill, they shut the government down. They blame the president. They use all the political stuff.
If it's not the president, why'd you bring up Kamala and Biden?
Because, like you just said, the president has the bully pulpit that they can use to influence that.
So then why would you vote for the guy, Trump, who ballooned the deficit in his first term?
The deficit was ballooned again because of COVID. So there was a lot of
so it was COVID that ballooned the deficit, and what about the deficit under Biden? Was that because of COVID or no?
So under Biden, because there was, again, you take credit for this recovery that happened, and just because the country was in a bad state, it's like Obama. Obama looks like,
I'm just asking about the deficit
under Obama because he took over in 2008 at the middle of
this is a pretty straightforward question. I'm just asking about the deficit.
Wasn't caused by the president.
I'm just asking about the deficit.
I want lower deficit.
Okay, the deficit was lower under Biden. It was lower under Obama than it was under Trump.
Well, the deficit has always gone up. That's the nature of the deficit.
The deficit actually,
president,
the deficit actually went down under Obama. Did you know that? It only started rising again after Trump was elected.
The deficit.
Yeah, the deficit.
Yeah, but you're still talking about, instead of spending $1 million more than you have every year, now you're only spending $900,000 more than you have.
So the Democrats did better. Obama did better.
And I think a lot of that had to do with the economic times and some of the things that were going on at that time. Again, a big recovery coming from 2008.
Why did the deficit shrink, though?
Again, if you have a higher GDP, you have more economic activity happening, you have more income coming in, you have more income taxes coming in.
By the end of Obama's last term, the deficit was lower than at the end of Bush's.
Again, we're talking about the difference between how much extra money you're spending than you have. The only answer to me is that you spend less money than you take in.
Yeah, and if
only
you're a science-minded guy, right? You're a science-minded guy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then the data, the data that we have available says that Democrats will reduce the deficit. Republicans tend to balloon the deficit.
Largely by increasing taxes.
Yep. But if you care about reducing the deficit, if you want to balance the budget, meaning getting the deficit to zero, there are steps to take. And it turns out Democrats tend to do better about that.
What percentage of people in this country do you think, of the 350 million or whatever, what percentage pay income taxes?
Probably 60%.
Effective taxes. So if you get money from SnapCard or whatever, and then you pay in at the end of the, so it's the top 50%, I think, of income earners are paying something like 70% of all of the tax money income tax money that's going in.
Look,
the bottom 10 or 20% don't pay anything. They make money off the government.
With as much respect as is deserved, which might be a lot. You said that you care about the deficit. I gave you a solution. We have the data that supports that solution. And now you're complaining about, but people are paying different amounts of taxes. It's not fair. Look, then it just seems like you don't care about that solution. You just don't care about balancing the budget.
Yeah, I don't care about balancing the budget by taxing the people, which stifles the economy, which hinders everything that this country is about.
Okay, so you just don't care about balancing the budget. You don't care about balancing the budget. You don't care about scientific consensus. You don't care about
why do you talk about the budget as being only one-sided? There's only one thing we can fix. Why can't we do something to your telescope and the military and we can't do anything about the debt?
I'm absolutely happy to reduce spending on certain things. But neither party is interested in that. One party is interested in reducing the deficit in other ways, which includes like taxing corporations at more than 15% or taxing billion. Literally, you must have seen this clip on TikTok, right? There was an amendment proposed in the House. Sorry, was this in the Senate? This may have been in the Senate. I don't remember. This was like a week ago. There was an amendment proposed to remove the tax cut on people making over, what, $10 million a year? Because they're getting a tax cut if you're making more than $10 million a year, whatever it is. And every single Republican is like, no, we're not going to reduce tax cuts on people making more than $10 million a year. Never. Impossible. Like what?
So let's steel man this argument here. Let's make this as bad as we can possibly make it. Let's say we take all the money of all the billionaires. We don't let them have anything else. We take all their savings, all their net worth, all their houses. We take all their money, right? And we distribute it amongst the rest of us. How much money are we going to get?
Well, there's 200 billionaires or something in the U.S. So that puts us at what, like 700. Like $70 trillion or something like this.
Okay.
Sorry, hold on. That math's wrong. It's more than that. So we have 340 million-ish, right? And then we have 200 billionaires. Let's say on average they have like $5 billion or something like that, right? That gives us, wow, that's a lot of money. So I guess we have 3.4 times 10 to the 20th dollars. So $1 trillion is.
You did your math wrong. That's like as many particles are in the known universe or something.
No, you're off by 64 orders of magnitude. No, $1 billion is just a lot of money. You're multiplying. Sorry,
okay, so
no. I'm stupid. You're absolutely right. I'm stupid. But also not that. So yeah. No. I was looking at the wrong total. So the total wealth of the billionaires is significantly smaller than that. You're right. It's something like $1 trillion, maybe a bit more than $1 trillion, right?
My goodness. Yeah. So you were off by an order of magnitude of 21 or something like that. Just FYI.
No, I was off by 8 orders.
I was off by 64 on the known universe.
You were off by 64. You were off. Yeah. Yeah.
You were off by 21 on a simple calculation, though. So
well, I was off by 8 orders of magnitude for what it's worth. Which is why I was like, yeah, I admitted it and then I fixed it, right? So that's $1 trillion, and that's assuming that there's only 200 billionaires. I guess there's 813, but that would be if we did that, which we should. Then great. Now we have now our deficit for that year is 0.
Okay, so hold on. No, so divide that money, what amount that is, by 370 million people or whatever, and how much money does every man, woman, and child get?
All right, let's do that. About $3,000.
Okay, now we're done with every billionaire, and everybody has an extra $3,000. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Okay.
Yeah, good. Good.
Right, at the end of the month, your $3,000 is going to be gone, and now you have nobody running Tesla. You have nobody running Amazon.
Why would these companies collapse if the guy at the top owns all the shares?
Touche. You're right. But you're wiping all their money out so that you can have. Who was it that said? Ben Shapiro said this. I know you hate Ben Shapiro. I'm sure. He said democracy is 3 people go into an elevator and one of them has $200 in his pocket and the other 2 beat that person up and they each take $100. That's democracy.
That's not really democracy. That's like mugging. But look, the point is that we have data. We have like actual data that says that we can reduce the deficit. That there's a way to reduce the deficit, and if you want to reduce the deficit,
by increasing taxes.
Yeah, right, and by electing Democrats like that is the better way to reduce the deficit. Now, if you don't care about
I think the best way to reduce the deficit is to stop taking so much of my money, because only half of the workers are it's 20% of the country.
I just got to be super clear as to your view. The best way to reduce taxes is to decrease the income that the government gets.
Is to decrease the output, the amount of money.
Taking my money. I assume you mean tax cuts, right?
Yes.
So tax cuts, which would decrease the income that the government gets, would reduce the deficit?
I'm saying, in addition, I think that the government should be smaller. We should have less money going out. We should have less money coming in. The government should do less. The government should not be involved in telescopes and stuff.
There's such great science coming out of it. There's the anti-science. You're just like, no, the government shouldn't be involved in telescopes. No, I don't want to fund basic research. I don't care. There it is. It's right there. It took 40 minutes to get you to admit it. But absolutely, yeah.
To the extent that we need to cut if we're 20% over budget, then let's cut 20% of the telescopes. We cut 20% of the military. We cut 20% of the teachers' funding. We cut 20% of everything that we can. We can't cut Social Security because people are depending on that. We can't default on our loans That's what 30, 40, 50% of our output right there. So we're talking about shrinking everything else that we can. We are in hot water, buddy. We have spent way too much money on our credit card.
Increase taxes on the people who don't need, a $10 million income.
The way that taxes are the billionaires aren't paying taxes because they're not taking salaries.
I'm not referring to billionaires. I'm referring to the people who take salary of $1 million+ a year.
I think they should probably pay. Yeah, I think they should probably be paying about what they're paying now at the top end of their money.
So then why did they just get a tax cut?
Down to what? 40 something percent? 40?
Like 12. I think that
but they're still not.
I think that they're getting like a 3.5% tax cut.
You're talking about a very small number of people at the very.
No, it's not.
At the very top end, they're still the number of their first $10,000 are not taxed at all, or they're taxed at 10%.
Something like 157,000 households earn $1 million or more annually.
Yeah, so that's what, half of 1%.
It's about 0.1%.
Yeah, but
the point is that's the 0.1% of the total number of tax filers, I should say. But the point is if you this is millions of dollars, billions of dollars perhaps of tax revenue that we're just throwing away. If you tax them at 3%, if you tax them at 3%,
and because you have set a rudimentary place of $1 million that you think that's enough money, then now you're going to come and take that. No, that person earned that money. They might have sleepless nights for that money. They might have not spent time with their children so that they could put some business up or put their house on.
And if they have 3% less of it, I don't think that they're going to cry. In fact, they'll be fine.
Just like
right? They will be fine, right?
When you increase the tax rate by 3%, that doesn't mean that they're going to pay 3%.
No. To be clear, their tax rate is decreasing by 3%, about 3.5%.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
it didn't have to. We didn't have to do that. They were fine. They were fine before.
Again, you're talking about a small number of people.
157,000 households.
Yeah, it's a relatively small number of households. There's that many in, I can stand on my roof and see that many households.
No, you can't.
I think I can see about 3 or 4 miles from my roof, and I can see all the way to downtown Dallas and all the way to, gosh. Yeah, no, I can definitely see 150,000 households from my roof.
So, suffice it to say, there are ways to increase the deficit without hurting the vast majority of Americans. Sorry, decrease the deficit without hurting the vast majority of Americans. The people that do end up getting hurt don't get hurt a whole lot. It turns out that whether you make $5 million or $4,950,000 doesn't actually affect your quality of life all that much. Of course, obviously it doesn't. Maybe you can fly on a private jet one fewer time that year, but wah.
And smug.
You're just not particularly interested in decreasing the deficit, and for some reason you're feeling bad for the billionaires that you hope you will one day be.
If you have a whole lot of debt on your credit card, and you keep spending money on that credit card every month, and you're not paying a lot, right? Yeah. You're still spending money, and you're not paying a lot on your credit card. There's 2 ways to solve this problem, right? Mm-hmm. You can get rid of the credit card and then pay it off, right? Or you can, eventually you're gonna have to pay, put out a bunch of money to pay that thing off. But there's 2 sides of the coin. There's the money coming in and there's the money going out. Yep. So you're only looking at one side of this. And I think that we should decrease what we are doing. I think we should decrease the size of government. The number of people who work in government should decrease.
Look, so with the credit card analogy, you could either pay more every year to pay it off, or you can reduce spending. Now, currently, we have a several $1 trillion credit card bill, right? We're not going to be able to pay that off by paying less every year.
Right, and by funding more telescopes and tax programs, it's on that credit card, it's going to keep going up.
The net is the important thing, right?
The net is the important, and we should decrease the amount of money that goes in, and we should decrease the amount of money that goes out.
Right.
You're going to have to increase the amount of money that goes out by more.
Trump is doing neither, to be clear. Democrats at least want to increase the amount of money going in.
Politics is hard. Yes, it's very, very difficult to get done.
It's really not hard. You just have to actually care about decreasing the deficit, which no Republican.
It's not hard for you when you just want to tax me more, right?
I'm sorry. Do you make $1 million or more a year?
I'm saying me as in the royal me, as in you're pointing to somebody else and saying, "Oh, it's your money." It's not you. Rules for thee and not for me.
If I made $1 million or more a year, I would still be interested in paying more taxes.
And if George Soros thinks that the government does such a great job, he can send his money to the IRS. He doesn't do.
I'm so done with him. George Soros, man. Is George Soros even a citizen of the U.S.? George Soros isn't even a citizen of the U.S. Like, what? What is happening? By the way, y'all, I do have some super chats to read, so let's read some super chats. Judas with the $2 says, guest crashing out popcorn. Yeah, agreed. Again with the $2, Judas, thank you. Guest really struggling when shit hits the fan. When it hits with facts. I can't read. And then $2 again from Judas. Are we sure the guest is not a meme in disguise? Yeah, he kind of is. Anarchist sends $5. At this point, I'm doubting the guest's doctorate. You shouldn't. Aaron Leitz with the $10. Big government bad, but big government military okay. This is your brain on faux news. Yeah, that's fair. And Judas with the $2. Guest is projecting their credit card debt issues. Maybe, but look, I mean, there's a point to be made that like the deficit needs to go down. Like it needs to go down, just because we need a future for our children and so on. But the way to do it isn't to reduce income. The way to do it actually is just to listen to what economists think. Economists, look, I mean, we got way off topic, but economists, they're hardly scientists, but they're at least experts. They know what they're talking about. So listen to the economists. They'll tell you how to fix the capitalistic hellhole we live in, right? Like they know the answers. They know, like, listen to the people who spent their whole life studying it. It's so easy. Listen to smart people about things that they're smart about. Problem solved. Just a guy. Welcome. Just a guy, you there? All right, it looks like Just a Guy's not coming up. Let's bring up another guest. Paranoid geopolitical Joker has been hanging out for a while, so let's bring him up. You
Hello?
There? Hey, Paranoid, how's it going?
Yeah, can you hear?
Yeah, I can.
Good,
Are you MAGA?
Yes.
Okay. I have to ask you 3 questions before we can start. I hope that's fair.
Sure.
First question: do you think that humans caused climate change?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that humans evolved from non-human apes?
Yes.
And do you think that vaccines are generally safe and effective?
No.
Okay. We got 2 for 3. We're almost there. Great. Okay. So and you disagree that MAGA? You think that MAGA is pro-science generally?
Yeah. I mean, it's no more than I think that this is all just my personal opinion, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not giving any medical advice. It's just I have resentment for the political left, and because of like C-19, the border, the left allows riots.
Sorry,
I want détente with Russia.
I was just
Israel.
interested in whether MAGA is pro or anti-science. You might be MAGA for other reasons, but I'm interested in talking about science.
Sure. Okay. I would say that yes. I mean, could we talk about C-19?
I guess, but you might have to use like safe words or something. I don't know how strict TikTok is.
Okay. My internet connection is a little bit intermittent here, so if I drop off, I'll call back in.
You're fine.
Well, C-19, and if we think if we think back to that time, there was the science got that completely wrong in so many cases. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. When you say the science, do you mean like the scientific consensus was incorrect?
Yes. For example, like I wore a mask in early March of 2020, and I was laughed at, mocked, and thrown out of my job. And approximately 2 months later,
you were laughed at for wearing a mask?
Yes, early on, if you remember the
oh, okay, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, so what? Sorry, we're going to talk about how the scientific consensus was wrong, right? We're not going to talk about like how like a guy said something one time.
Well, I mean, it's just my point is that the science, the mainstream so-called experts did a 180. They got it completely wrong.
Wait a minute. So isn't that what we would expect the scientific community to do if something was like? Suppose for a moment that the scientific consensus was wrong about something, and I don't think that that's true, by the way. But suppose for a moment that that was true in this case. Wouldn't you want them to do a 180 when they figure out that they got something wrong? When new evidence comes to light?
I think they should have been. My position on it was that like I thought it was I wanted to wear a mask, and when it was, and then approximately, and I was told that, like I said, I got laughed at and mocked and thrown out of my job, and then approximately 2 months later they're forcing people to wear masks. So my position was, well, maybe if it's maybe we should have respect that for me personally, it was kind of hard to breathe, so I respected people's right not to wear a mask if they didn't want to. I mean, this is just one example,
Wait a minute. So what was the scientific consensus that was wrong here?
Okay, in late February, early March of 2020,
yep,
the majority of experts were saying that not to wear masks for C19.
Why were they saying that? And so I do remember Fauci said this. Why was this said?
I don't know, but they were
well,
wrong.
we do know. They've actually said they actually explained why they said this. Not because the science says that you shouldn't wear a mask, but because they were worried about the availability of masks for healthcare workers who need it.
Yeah, I don't really buy that.
Okay, so do you have an example of like scientific analysis or some sort of meta-analysis rather that indicates that actually the scientific consensus was against masks prior to April or something like this?
Well, the health agencies that they just did a 180 on their position. I mean,
their position changed. The question is did the scientific consensus change? Because I actually don't think it did.
So you think that well, why not? I mean, couldn't if I actually believe Fauci, which I don't, but say I did for a minute, why not try and just do a substitute? Why not wear like a t-shirt or a bandana or a pillowcase? I mean,
look, you can criticize him for that policy recommendation. Perhaps given the information that he had, he made the wrong decision with that information. That's totally plausible. People aren't perfect. Maybe he made the wrong decision, but that doesn't say anything about whether the science was whether the scientific consensus was wrong. It's like irrelevant to the question.
I'll give you another example, and I'll use TikTok speak here because I don't.
Sure.
How about the origins of C19? I'll just leave it there, okay? Because I don't want to say anything else, and I'll say this too, that I never got the C19 vax, despite the totalitarianism of the political left in 2021. And if you remember back to that time, there was a lot of pressure and coercion and outright anger and resentment toward people like me who never got the C19 vax. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, generally speaking, if somebody's more at risk for contracting a disease, I don't want to hang out with you.
Okay, but you realize that the C19 vax, do you really believe that young and healthy people needed it?
Not to protect themselves. The reason why you would take the C19 vax is, I mean, like, By the way, it did actually decrease negative outcomes. But more than that, it reduced the rate at which it spread, because it reduces the prevalence of symptoms. It reduces symptom duration. No, it's not transmission. It's not individual transmission, because if you get the symptoms, you're going to be coughing anyway, coughing and sneezing or whatever. The point is that it reduced the duration of symptoms, and it reduced the likelihood that you would show symptoms at all. And symptoms, sneezing, coughing, these are the things that spread it. So if you are sick for less time, then you are less likely to spread it to other people.
Yeah, but somebody would also probably be more likely to go out rather than home if they feel okay. So they might be spreading it that way. Do you see how it can go both ways?
Sorry, repeat that.
Well, if somebody is not feeling sick because they're more likely to go out, but they could still potentially be spreading it. So I think I think it goes both.
I mean, so what is true is that regardless of whether or not you were vaccinated, if you had COVID, then you should have stayed inside so you didn't spread it. But you are less likely to be symptomatic, which is how it's spread, by coughing on people, essentially. You're less likely to be symptomatic, and you're less likely to be symptomatic for a long amount of time if you were vaccinated. So like, you're just less likely to get other people sick around you. And so like, yeah, like and by the way, that is what the scientific consensus seems to be. And so I'm absolutely okay being like mad at you if you're willingly exposing yourself, and therefore exposing me by just being out in public doing this, to some sickness that I don't want to get. Yeah, of course I'm going to be mad at you if I have to share space with you.
Sure. But so you're saying, well, do you mind if how many C-19 vaccines did you get? 3 or 4?
I think 2 or 3. I'd have to check my card.
Okay.
I moved out of the US in the middle of 2022 for work, and the place I moved just it wasn't really a thing over there. Like, they didn't really have like these like free vaccines, and they weren't really pushing for it, so I just didn't worry about it.
So you thought that that the mainstream medical establishment and people on the left were justified in being angry at people like me who refuse the C-19 vax? Did I understand you say that correctly?
I mean, like, look, anger is an emotional reaction. Like, is that emotional reaction justified? It depends on what information they have, I suppose. But it does seem to be true that, generally speaking, people who were vaccinated had better outcomes than people who weren't, and communities that had larger percentages of vaccination tend to have better outcomes than communities that didn't.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice. It's just I'm into alternative medicine. So I had.
Okay, so to be clear, and just to move us back on topic, and then you can say your piece. This is explicitly an anti-scientific view, right?
What's that?
Alternative medicine being anti-vax, like you're just rejecting the entire medical consensus on all of this.
Just think that just in my personal experience, I've had doctors have made me worse.
Okay.
And that's how I got into all this alternative medicine. And I've had and there's other ailments that I've had been successful at treating myself personally. So that's just, it's just my experience. And there were all kinds of doctors in the spring of 2020 who were saying that they thought that C-19 could be treated effectively if it was treated early, around the first day of symptoms.
Yeah, I'm sure that there were. Was that the medical consensus or no?
No, it was suppressed.
It was suppressed?
Yeah.
Or how do you know it was suppressed rather than just actually most of the other scientists just don't agree?
Because the mainstream medical establishment said there's nothing we can do. Come back when your lips turn blue. That was the mainstream consensus was essentially, in the spring of 2020, around that time, that there was nothing that could be done for C-19, which I completely disagree with.
I mean, so generally speaking, antivirals work sometimes, is my understanding, but generally you have to ride out symptoms. Like when you get a viral infection, Like if you catch the flu or something, there's not usually something that you can do about that. Like there are some antivirals, but generally you just kind of like manage the symptoms. You stay at home, you drink some hot tea, you take cough syrups, maybe drink some NyQuil or some Dayquil or something, and then if it gets bad, you go to the doctor. Otherwise, you ride it out and you're fine in a few days. Right? That's generally how we deal with viruses in the US.
Not how I deal with it.
Okay.
I'd be happy to tell you if you'd like.
I wouldn't actually.
Okay. Fair enough.
But look, I mean, it seems like let me frame it this way. Why do you think that so many trained physicians, not even physicians, let's say medical researchers, immunologists, virologists, epidemiologists, why do you think that so many of them so strongly disagree with you?
I think that the pharmaceutical industry has a lot of reach
on virologists and epidemiologists
over the entire medical establishment.
So you're suggesting that like the whole thing is corrupt?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any evidence that supports this?
That I mean, C19 would be the example I would go to. That
well, but that's the thing that you're trying to prove, right? You're trying to prove that they were corrupt about C19. So you can't cite C19 as the evidence.
I'm trying to I'm trying to explain to you that there are alternative treatments out there, that our health agencies are heavily funded by the pharmaceutical industry, and doctors.
Oh, that's true. So you would be in favor of increasing public funding for these things, right? So that they're not funded as much by pharmaceutical industry?
I would be in. I just want what would I say, a lack of corruption, I guess.
Well, so how do you do that? If you want the same amount of research being done, but you want less of it being funded by the pharmaceutical companies, where does that funding come from?
Funding in terms of what, like new treatments, or what types of funding are you referring?
Research, funding to study viruses, come up with new treatments, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't exclude anyone from funding necessarily, but I just think there should be transparency. I think it should be non-biased. I think that's my.
Are you aware that when you publish something, when you publish academic literature, mm-hmm. one of the pieces that you include is any who funded your research, and whether or not you have any stake in the matter, whether or not there might be any bias in your that's included in scientific publications, right?
Yeah, I mean, you realize that during C19 there was certain words of generic prescriptions that could not be said.
Conflict of interest statement. Can you address what I said?
Oh, in terms of the funding?
Well, in terms of scientific research, when you have external funding for your scientific research, you have to give a conflict of interest statement. So it is out in the air. You can just go look at it. You can go look at who funded whatever project for any paper that you read.
Okay, that's good.
So I don't know, what else are you asking for?
Just trying to articulate to you that one of the reasons I think we saw the disaster of a response to C19 was because of influence of the pharmaceutical industry. Do you think that's an unfair statement?
No, I think I totally agree. I think that we should take the pharmaceutical industry out of research entirely, and we should instead fund it entirely with public funds.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, and I'm fine with that. I mean, and couldn't there be, other options too?
What are the other
Colleges
options? What else do you do?
colleges, well, colleges and universities, and just individuals. I mean, maybe
Colleges and universities are funded by the government, or they're funded by pharmaceutical companies for their medical research. Like that's how it is. But if you want pharmaceutical funding or pharmaceutical influence out of, like medical research, then you have to get that funding from somewhere else.
I think that I don't think they need to be necessarily completely out of it. I just think there has to be transparency and honesty, and
there is transparency. It's in the conflict of interest statement. You can just go read it.
I don't. I mean, I guess I would just keep repeating myself if I. I mean, I just I think that well, okay. So, well, let me ask you. How do you think the U.S. did, like the medical establishment, the health agencies? How overall do you think they did during C-19? Do you think they did good?
I think that they should have been. I think that they did okay, it depends on the state. I think some states did better than others. I think that the problem of having a federalized government is that, and the fact that this was politicized for some crazy reason, led to significantly bad outcomes in some places and significantly better outcomes in other places. I think that, if even Trump could have done this. If Trump had been more had like actually taken the emergency power that he's for some reason now using on like the southern border, and he said, look, this is an emergency, I'm invoking an Emergency Powers Act, and then actually like enforced a genuine 3 or 6 week like actual like closure of like everything and not left it up to the states, I think that we probably could have done a lot better. But because we didn't do that, we basically have had like this ongoing COVID thing for like years now, because we basically just didn't deal with it initially.
Okay, so look, this is just all my opinion, okay? But I thought President Trump's response was reasonable. I thought that 2 weeks to slow the spread, what was reasonable. But what we saw happen is that blue states, Democratic governors, were imposing totalitarian lockdowns in both 2020 and 2021. But then all of a sudden, in the summer of 2020, the left does a 180 and encouraged protests and allowed chaos and riots. So don't you find that hypocritical?
I don't think that anybody was like, yeah, we're going to lift the ban so that riots can happen, right?
Well, they supported and encouraged protests in the summer of 2020.
You'll absolutely have people protest, but the lovely part about protests is that they generally happen outside. So generally speaking, protests are not particularly big spreading events. But it's neither here nor there. It's neither here nor there. The point is that like I don't think it was particularly well handled by the US because of how decentralized everything was, all the policy making.
In California, they closed the beaches.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just it seems to me to
But that has nothing. Do you think that there was like a scientific consensus that led to that, or no? Do you think that was just some like dumb politician making that decision?
I think that all I'm trying to illustrate here is the extreme double standard of the left. That they're saying how dangerous, how it's an unknown, virus.
It was, yeah.
Sure.
Right.
And yeah, and but then all of a sudden
that was medical consensus. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden they do a 180 in the summer of 2020 and encourage protests.
Does that have anything to do with scientific consensus, or is that politically expedient?
I'm just pointing out that they're crazy. That they're saying how we all have to lock down, and then they.
What does this have to do with whether or not the scientific consensus was correct?
I think that it was pretty. I always thought, even from that being outside, generally speaking, things were pretty safe. I always thought that.
Okay, so the point is that you disagree with the Democratic, like the mainstream Democratic consensus on, not even the consensus, the mainstream Democratic politicians' views on, how they handled COVID. You're allowed to disagree with that. I think that, some of it was good, some of it was bad. But that has nothing to do with whether or not the scientific consensus was correct here.
Are you talking about the scientific consensus in terms of being outside?
The scientific consensus in general. I've yet to find somebody say, oh yeah, actually the scientific consensus was actually wrong about this, and therefore it's reasonable to not trust them.
Well, I explained. I talked about mass. I talked about the origin.
But there was no scientific consensus that masks were bad, by the way.
About the speed of social distancing, like all this stuff was not like it. There were so many mistakes made, and by
there were a lot of policy mistakes made. I agree.
Have you heard
policy mistakes and scientific mistakes are different. You're conflating policy mistakes from like what the scientific data says.
But there were experts like that were saying don't lock down.
Okay. Look, so that's why we appeal to scientific consensus rather than individuals.
Say again, I didn't hear.
That's why I appeal to scientific consensus rather than individuals. You can find an individual who says anything, right? But the odds of finding 99% of an entire academic field saying the same thing, well, then it's probably likely that thing is true.
Yeah, do you agree that they 180'd on a lot of their positions, the scientists, whether it's mass or the origins or
the scientists, like the public-facing scientists, or like the scientific consensus? Because absolutely, I'm sure that some of the public-facing scientists changed their views in light of new data. But as far as I'm aware, the scientific consensus didn't really change much. I mean, like in the very, very early days of COVID, like when they were first learning how it works, then yeah, I'm sure that it changed. But after like by like March or April, like the scientific consensus didn't seem like it was changing that much.
Well, those are the the examples that I point to. I mentioned already. So the mass, the origins, I never thought that the young and healthy needed the vax. I never got it. We've been over this. We don't have to keep. I think we're just.
But like, I don't know. It just seems like this, like the epistemology that you're using, or I shouldn't say that. The way that you're coming to your conclusion seems to be based kind of like on vibes and based on like personal experiences rather than appealing to what like we can establish is true about the world around us using the scientific process.
Well, I thought I was right about the mass, and I never got the C-19 vax either, and I thought that where you're talking about I thought that C-19 was the greatest example of totalitarianism that I've ever seen, and it came from the left, not the right.
Well, yeah, I mean, Biden was in office, although that's not quite true. I mean, like Trump was in office for the first year, right?
I know, but Trump did not. Trump. It was the Democratic governors in 2020 that were imposing these lockdowns.
Right, and I mean, like I agree, but shouldn't?
Yeah,
I mean, just to be clear, like when you have super infectious diseases that you don't fully understand, isn't it prudent to do everything you can to stop it from getting out of control?
Well, I think that there was a lot of harm done. There was like the school closures, for example. I think that was detrimental.
Yeah, very well could have been.
Yeah, and I also think there were record rates of depression, and yeah. So I thought that there was, and look, I would actually agree with you that if you're saying to me here, it was an unknown, a new virus. We need to err on the side of caution. I might be able to forgive that, but I can't because of the summer of 2020.
By the way, just to be clear, like the vast majority of states issued lockdown orders, right?
Yeah, they were just much more extreme in blue states, and they lasted a lot longer. Like in,
I mean, like,
go ahead.
Blue states also tend to be a lot more urban, so like you know perhaps that's not so surprising that they would have a harder time dealing with an infectious disease. Like, is that,
well,
I don't know, is that so, like if you're in New York City, you have a lot more to worry about with regards to COVID than you do if you're in rural Alabama, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's reasonable.
So like it would make sense that you would need a more severe, more strict response in New York City than you would in rural Alabama.
Yeah.
Like that's totally normal.
Yeah, and look, I actually agree with you, but I'm just saying, and that what we saw in the summer of 2020 was a complete reversal of everything they were saying, because in the worldview of the left, protesting
is important. Yeah.
Was it and it seemed to be in the deranged mind of the left, it was more important than what they were locking down for.
Yes, that was the view. Yeah. Also, lockdowns were over by then, by the way.
Do you agree with that?
Do I agree that protests can be more important than lockdowns?
Were you in favor of the protesting in the summer of 2020?
Some of them. I mean, like, generally, I think that the cause was good.
Okay, and you were also in favor of lockdowns. Is that right?
Yeah, at least at the beginning. And by the way, like, there were no there were no state. Actually, I think that there was one state that still had a lockdown going by mid-June. And I think that was Oregon.
The lockdowns
Oregon is the only state. No, I'm sorry. New York had a lockdown going until but I guess theirs wasn't as strict of a lockdown. They had a restriction going until June 27th.
But the lockdowns went on for like approximately 2 years. I mean, they might have stopped.
No, they literally didn't. All of the lockdowns ended by like early to mid-May, or early to late May in 2020, and then they were just lifted after that.
I don't think that's right.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the orders.
In California here, maybe I can pull it. I'd have to pull this up somewhere.
Oh, but, no, actually, you're right. California went until August.
Right.
But then after August, it was lifted. Yeah. I read April, but I saw August. Yeah, absolutely. In California, it went until August 28th. That was the latest lockdown. Yep.
But I think lockdowns came back in 2020.
Oh, no, actually, New Mexico went until November. What the fuck? Why did New Mexico's so... Oh, no, okay. They just didn't pass a bill to lift it. Okay. I don't think that they actually had a lockdown for like 7 months in New Mexico, right?
I mean, there were lockdowns in 2021 as well, if I remember. Like
I think that there were, like during Delta or something like this, right? Yeah, there was another strain that was spreading more.
Okay, so so it's fair for me to say that there were lockdowns for approximately 2 years, right? I mean,
well, no, I mean if you have a 2-month lockdown, let's say you have a 2-month lockdown from the end of March to the end of May, and then you lift it, and then a year later you have a 4-week lockdown from, I don't know, February to March, then no, that would not be fair to say that you had lockdowns for 2 years.
Well, on and off. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, but then you could say that you had lockdowns on and off for 100 years because there were lockdowns or 150 years because there were lockdowns during the Spanish flu in 1919. And then there were lockdowns last year or 3 years ago or whatever. If there's big gaps, then no, you can't. It's not fair to say that.
In a 2-year time period, that's not a. I don't think that's a fair way to frame that. I mean, the
lockdown time for almost every state was like less than 3 months total over the course of the entirety of COVID.
You mean like when there would be lockdowns and then they would stop it and then start it again, like we said in 2021 during Delta?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it totaled up? I'd have to go back and research it. I just remember the and it was really a hard time for me personally because my gym closed. And that was something that I had done literally every day of my life for like 15 years. And when my gym closed, it was very difficult for me
Sorry to hear that.
psychologically.
I can imagine. Yeah.
It was. I mean, I think you can remember, like back in that time was I tried to do other things. I tried to go on walks, and it's just the gym was my thing. So I guess that's why I have I C19 is a major source of resentment for me, and it's
look, I get it. It wasn't a good time for most people, except some people got super rich. Those PPP loans that never had to be repaid, that sucks.
Yeah, it was but yeah, anyway, I mean, I feel a lot better now, and but yeah, that was a really hard 2 years, man.
I agree, but that doesn't mean that we should just like throw away the scientific investigation. Like that's like, I mean, you can say that there's bad policy making, and I might even agree with you on that. But like doesn't mean that well, bad policies were made, I'm gonna shoot that guy. Like it doesn't, like, why blame the people who didn't do it? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know, man. Like, if you have like, look, COVID was really hard for a lot of people. Like a million plus Americans died, right? So many people, like a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people got really sick. Like it sucked for a lot of people. And I get that. It doesn't mean that like we have to burn down the whole thing and start over.
Yeah, I just think that it was a glimpse of the reaction of both the right and the left when faced in a and I think it was just, and it's fair for you to say that this really wasn't known at the time, to some degree, that it just was. I think it was just made a lot bigger deal than it should have.
Well, I mean, to be clear, more than 1 million Americans died from it, right? So like, that's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely, but what I was saying, and we don't have to go back over this. I thought there was effective early treatment available that would have made that number a lot lower if it was done properly. And I could be wrong. That's what I believe.
I mean, I'm glad that you aren't a doctor then. I guess. Look, I guess that we probably are past where we need to be. So, or we're past. We've finished the conversation. So I'm gonna let you go. Is that okay, Paranoid?
Yeah, absolutely. You have a nice day, okay?
All right, likewise.
Take care.
All right, y'all. That was less spicy than it usually is. Usually we get some, yeah, it's still the #1 cause of chronic illness. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so, less spicy than usual. I wish more people would just, like, listen to scientists about scientific things, listen to economists about economic things, listen to psychologists about psychological things, listen to historians about historical things. This would all be good. This would be good. Listen to smart people about things that they're smart about, right? Yeah, I mean, like, and like, look, I understand that people are mad that he said, my gym closed and that was really hard. Like, I understand that a lot of people lost people, and that's clearly like clearly worse than your gym getting closed down. But like, look, if like his life was disrupted in a major way, so of course that's going to be upsetting. It's perhaps less disrupting than, you losing somebody, losing or getting sick and things like that. But like, look, it is disruptive, and we can be empathetic about that. So everybody, it is 12:20. I'm gonna go make myself some coffee, eat some lunch. I'm going to call it a day. So today's Friday. I will see you guys on Sunday for Unapologetic. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And I have super chats. Super chats. Before I go, I have super chats. From Judas with the $2, or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, from Judas with the $2, would guest use bleach for C19? I hope not. I'm sure he was talking about ivermectin. And then from C-Bar with the $2, people conflate science with bad science reporting. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. All right. Oh, and I also got a Cash App, $4 from Dakota for blue collar 50+ hours, and I'm liberal. He has the time. I feel like I'm missing the context because this is an hour old. But thank you so much, Dakota. Thank you guys all for being generous. I'm going to buy Maple today. I have enough money that I can do so. Take care, everybody.